Hi guys, and welcome to another episode. Isn't it funny how I have my starting voice? I'm so sorry. I heard
Hmm.
myself do it and it was just very funny. Okay, take two. Hi
I know you
guys.
didn't.
Oh god damn it. And welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast, Unresolved Textual Tension. It's me, your host, Maria, and today with me on this Sunday of Sundays, the ruggedly handsome William.
Hey
Ooh.
guys, and if you're like, oh my god, I remember those two on the channel at the same time, that's right. This is the first time me and Maria have been doing a video on our own since Mexican Gothic, which was the only one we did last year. So it has been a
Fucking
bunch.
travesty.
Yeah, it's been a while. There were a lot of interlopers on this channel, and now we're back to those who built this city, the two of us. And yeah, so the book we're doing today is Blood Over Bright Haven. Which was one of our book club picks. That's if you join our Patreon, you get to decide one of the books we read each month. And this actually, I just lied. It was not the Patreon pick. This is one that we did as a book club. It was one I picked for the mid-month book. But either way, that's
It got
it
moved
was
around.
it got moved around a bit, so it's at the end of the month, which is why I got confused for a second. This book, from what I understand, is making the rounds and is pretty popular. And I was dreading it, and then it ended up being pretty good, and I was very surprised.
Yeah, so I knew nothing about it, but there's just been a slew of books recently, especially that had been read for the like mid-month or the end of month that just haven't been doing great. So I kind of went in because as per usual, I know nothing about the book. I did no research. I didn't even read a summary of the most I got was I think Chris M made a point that she was worried it would be like woman in academia a la Catabasis, and she was worried about it being another Alice. um and that was it. And I think I'd already started by the time I read that, so I really had no idea what I was going into. And I remember texting Will, be like, this book is actually not bad. Like, this is actually, I wouldn't say S tier, but solid, serviceable, performing B tier, maybe even like a B plus when I started. And I was enjoying it. It kind of had the surprise enjoyment, but even more so than the Tainted Cup had. I went into the Tainted Cup had some trappings that I was like, ugh, this is gonna be one of those world building books that doesn't have a good plot or good characters.
Uh-huh.
And this didn't have that because while it does have some very interesting world building, it's not as in depth and ooh, look at all this new stuff that some of the other world building heavy books we've had. And so it was just genuinely surprising that I was because also I have to explain, the Thanksgiving holiday, while completely devoid from its American origins, my family is Greek. We're immigrants. So it is the whole Columbus thing we do not give a crap about. It was just, you got a bunch of Greeks together and they were like, there's a holiday where we just get to eat, and it's all about food. And that's kind of how we took it. So it's huge in my family, and this was my first year hosting in my house, and I was like, God, I'm gonna have to read this book on top of prepping for Thanksgiving. Man. And it actually ended up being it was a good time. It was a good time, I will say. And I think Will agrees. I would say I enjoyed the first half more than the second.
Yeah, the book is stronger in its first half than its second, and there's definitely a lot of flaws and weaknesses to the book. But what is the premise before we go any farther with our thoughts?
So the premise of this book is there's a cool city called Tehran, Tiran, and it is powered by magic, baby, and all the cool kids get to live in Tehran. And if you don't live in Tehran, then you are unfortunately a Quen person who gets hit by this thing called the Blight, which is this terrible, it's almost like lightning coming down from the sky and literally separating you, your skin from your sinew from your bones, muscle, you spiral out like the lightning is a great spiralizer, and you poof into some blood mist. Very graphic. You hit it almost immediately when the book opens, but within the city, it's safe. We don't have blight here, baby. It's a safe, nice time if you're in the city. And amongst the city people, there are the mages, and they are responsible for the protective barrier that protects everybody on the inside from the blight and all the terribleness outside. And the mages, they've created electricity, baby. This is not steampunk. This is magic punk, baby. We've got trains. We've got water, flushing water.
Heating.
Yeah, we've got heating, all powered by the mages and their and also through the framework of a religion that are like the original mage built this city, created magic, founded everything. Ooh, he's so great. And he bestowed upon all the future generations the magic words of himself, and now all the mages are like they're doing shit. But oh no, Tehran kind of a patriarchy and got some misogyny. There's never been a female high mage. Mages, some girls can be mages and they can do magic, but only to teach young boys magic, because women can be teachers, they can be nurses, they can be in machine repairists, but
Yes.
high mages, no, that's the boys club, baby. And thus we meet our main character, Siona, and she's super smart, and she's like academic bookworm, but to the degree of you're like, oh yeah, this girl, like she's got the ego to boot and the lack of noticing other humans to go with it, and she's ready to take the high mage test, and they only let a woman take it once every 10 years because they don't actually want to let a girl in, but you know they got to do it to show that they're being equality. And our girl Siona goes in, and she's like, I'm gonna do it for my mentor, for the other women that I'm not actually super invested in, and for my own glory, baby. My father abandoned me because I was a girl, and now I shall show him. And she beats the high mage exam, and she ends up being paired with a Quen assistant. And her and the Quen assistant have to work together on her presentation. That's going to be a big to do for how to expand. The city has overcrowding problems because, again, you have a limited like footprint
Base.
of the city, and you people breed, population growing. And so they need to expand it. And Siona has to present her thing, and her Quen assistant are going to present together and work together for her presentation. But oh no, things get complicated. And that's the summary. That's not the summary. That's
They
the
uncover
premise.
dark secrets within the bowels of their society, and maybe not everything is as it appears. So this book plays with a lot of, or not plays with, this book has a lot of archetypes and tropes that we've read in other books. But I think what what makes this book work is that the author puts in the work early on to really ground them with a certain amount of specificity and to do a lot of small things that we'll talk about as we go to make them more believable and less wish fulfillment-y. And that goes a long way towards making the book less annoying to read. Like, this is a book that starts off with like, patriarchy keeping women down. And it didn't even trigger my contrariness where I'm like, well, if the author's telling me something, maybe I am with Hitler and the devil on this one. Like, you know, that contrariness I'm quite famous for on this channel. It didn't even trigger for me by that point, and I think it's because the author is actually quite good at getting you in the mindset of the characters and also making them kind of likable and believable. And so there's just a lot of small things that I think the author does well. This book also has a hard magic system, which usually are not like my favorite, but I think actually works quite well here. The way magic works is that they draw in power from the other realm, a garden of plenty, basically, as just like a mana reserve, and they then basically use coding to make sure it does something in this world through a typewriter, a magic typewriter, which is pretty dope. I liked that. And I think also the book benefits from having a kind of 1920s early, like bustling city suffragette kind of feeling to it that I think helps inform a lot of your expectations of the city. I think, though, that's kind of one of the things that becomes weaker as time goes on and we focus more on the Quen within the society of the city. And we find out that the author actually didn't do as much world building work there, and it doesn't quite make as much sense. And like, that's one of the weaker pillars of her writing is her world building in that respect, but it's trying to bear a lot of weight in the story. And so like there's certain things that just don't make sense. The first half of the story where Siona is working with her Quen assistant worked has almost like a fanfic level of focus on just these two characters and their interactions, and it's good. They
It's so
interact
good.
well. Their dialogue is kind of charming and fits them well, and that buys a lot of goodwill. Like this is one of the few books where like even towards the end, like I wanted to listen to it over listening to something on YouTube that I liked, and that happens so
So
rarely with
rarely.
books we read. And I've said before that you can score a book like in a video game. You might score it like the music is 1 out of 5 and the story is 1 out of 6, and all that really matters is the gameplay when it comes to a game. With a
Hmm.
book, all that really matters in a lot of ways is the readability of it. How much do you want to read it and how engaging do you find it? And I found this to be very engaging.
It really was. And I think you're right that that kind of like turn of the century bustling city women finally at the point where like they're given the opportunity to potentially go up a leg even though the system doesn't actually want them to, but the systems pretend like it feels. And one of the points I made to Will is one of the reasons this works is it doesn't feel like Siona is a girl boss,
Mm-hmm.
like a modern, because the thing that we've had issues with in a lot of
Yes.
stories that are trying to tell this is where it feels like a modern girl with all of the modern sensibilities is being thrown down into this story. And what makes her work a lot is that she feels more a la a suffragette, but also a self-absorbed academic, where in at the beginning of the book there's very much like she's like, if I don't do this then no woman will be able to do it in like another 10 years. But what she actually cares about more than that is the fact that all of her work, like her ego, like this girl's got an ego on her that is pressing her to be the thing, her to do the thing. And so it reads much less like just a modern girl thrown in and being like,
Well,
women can do anything a man can do.
yeah. So, like, to compare it for a minute, to the like, so for like right from the first scene. Well, we'll talk about the prologue in a second that deals with the Quinn, but the first scene of this is her going towards the test where they're gonna like let one woman do a test for Archmage. And it starts out with her just being super nervous with her cousin in the car and being, or on the bus or whatever, and being like, oh my God, I don't think I can do this. This was such a bad idea. And right there within this scene, we get the sense that she exists within a framework in this world where feminism is kind of a thing, and she's not just like, to contrast this with like Iron Widow, where like that's a super sexist society, but apparently there have never been women doing things in that world. Immediately Siona mentions a few other women and what they've done, and then there's a woman counselor that also is kind of pushing for women to be more like, she exists within a
Within a
fabric in
framework.
this movement, and she's not just herself and sassy and awesome.
Yeah, and Miss Allie Snow makes the point. Siona did feel like an authentic product of her environment, not a mouthpiece for the author. We hear about, as Will said, multiple women who were mages whose high mage husbands took credit for their work, or and how they handled that. And so like this is a society where it's known that women have done really thing, and like it really does have that like we're on the tipping point of change kind of feeling. And she's a product of all of the female progress that has come beforehand that she acknowledges. Like she like out the gate is mentioning you with female mage names that did important things that other people aren't as aware of. um
Mm-hmm.
and it works really well. And I also will completely hit it, the focus on the two main characters and their relationship and the development. And what you have is two characters that are learning, number one, to work with each other, but one is teaching the other one about this system she's obsessed with, and finding someone who is coming at it with a completely different viewpoint that is allowing her to think differently. And so it's this really great mash of two different classes, and not like super far apart, but two different classes of people from two different economic stratas and two different classifications of this society. Because our main character, Siona, she is Tyrannish, which is the people of Tehran and this city. And our second main character, Tamil, he is a Quen, which are the people from outside Tehran.
Irish.
They're very much coded Irish or Scottish, Celtic,
Generic.
that kind of vibe. And basically, they're outsiders who have come in, who have made it through the terrible like basically they have to run a
Well, so that's the
gauntlet.
first scene.
Yeah,
That's the first scene of the book is him and his tribe being like, "It's too cold. We can't keep living in this cold. We're gonna have to try to get to the city, but the blight might get us." And you're like, "What's the blight?" And unfortunately, the book I think reveals it a little too fast. But they're like, "All right, we're gonna make it across the ice." So they run across the ice, but as they go, they start getting hit by the blight, which is a
that
thing
lightning
that
thing.
happens. Which just I think Chris M said it like unspools you. It's like think
Yep.
a grosser version of the thing that happened in that Marvel movie. And like all of his tribe is one by one falling until like he grabs his niece as her dad is being unspooled, and they are the only two to make it across, and the rest of his tribe is wiped out and dead. And that happened like 10 years before the book, like this whole part with Siona starts.
Yeah.
Um, and again, I'll talk about how I think the Quinn are kind of easily the weakest part of this book, despite the book being putting a lot of weight on them. But one of the things I really did appreciate right from the beginning is Siona is so racist, and it's so funny. Right from the beginning, it's really racist about the Quinn.
Really, really
In the way
racist.
that like in the way that I think people, I mean, so it's more like 1920s racism, but you still see this kind of thing with like or a less sharpened version of this thing with like the way people treat like their Hispanic yard workers or something like that, where there is still, even among people who are trying actively not to be racist, a kind of like lower class ew kind of factor to it that I think really comes through. And then again, it's also more like 1920s Italian, Irish, like no dogs on Irish allowed kind of a vibe. But like the author does not shy away from Siona having these inner thoughts of like, well, he was smart, but for a Quinn, and you know, maybe he wouldn't get this or not. And I appreciated that so much because
Yeah.
so many authors shy away from um, really portraying that ugliness in their characters.
And that was exactly the point I was going to make. So many times we've had
Mm,
characters that
nice
should.
stolen
Okay,
valor.
listen, you. So many times we've read books where the character has grown up within a system and yet somehow is just like the bestest, most like, why would we treat them that way? They're still human, and like they're just a
Mm-hmm.
mouthpiece, as Miss Allie Snow said, for the author. And the or like you have like the bad boy character who actually didn't actually do anything bad and was actually good the whole time. And like there's this fear of making your characters morally flawed and or like fit within a system. And
Non-modern in their
yes,
thought process, even.
and having to have them confront, because there are multiple points where Siona, even after she's like, I'm gonna do better, consistently keeps making decisions that are not like that are fucking shit up.
That
And
are not better.
that are not better, and it works really well because this like it's basically this thing is ingrained and entrenched, and coming like going outside of it and coming outside of it is a process that cannot happen over a like 3-month period. And it works really well. The first half I mentioned before I liked more, and it was because of that focus on Tommel and Siona's relationship, the two of them learning with each other, growing, him pushing back, her having to face some things. And also just as a character dynamic, it's one I enjoy a lot.
It was one of the better romances we've read. Like,
Yeah,
easily one of the better ones. There was no fever touch.
none.
One thing we should say is that the audiobook narrator for this is Moira Quirk,
Quirk.
who
Oh
also
my.
did the Locked Tomb trilogy. And, like, oof. It makes the books like 20% more charming. Like, I think the book is still strong and I would have liked it, but there is such like it's so easy to listen to. And I found myself in my head kind of doing her very specific sort of silly lilt at times that she
Yep.
has. You should definitely listen to it if you're gonna listen to it.
There was a couple of points where I was listening and reading at the same time. I have to do that sometimes to get through the book very quickly. And there is emphasis. Like there was this one point where she says, no, wait. And Quirk whispers it, like with this like powerful like energy behind it, but in a whisper. And like in the book, it was just no wait. It was not even like wait was italicized or anything. Quirk was like, I'm gonna just throw some razzle dazzle on this shit. And the liberties she takes to add those, and because it brings a humanness and a I don't hate, but there's a lot of audiobook narrators where they read things in the same cadence, and like
Mhm.
they have a da 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 da, the kind of repetition. Not so with Quirk. She knows when to like slap a little spice on some shit. And it does really make it good and very easy to listen to. But I do think the second half now. While the second half is doing what the author wanted to do, it
Mm-hmm.
just for me as a reader was less enjoyable than the like coziness of the first half.
And it also starts doing the Novik thing of people sitting around thinking about themes a little bit too much, where they're just like, "This is the theme that I'm thinking about right now," and you're like, "Okay, we got it. Let's hurry this shit up." But I mean, she also in the second half has some nuance to characters that I'm always asking for in these
Yep.
books. That's never there. Her mentor character specifically is really fleshed out in a way that I thought was very interesting and humanizing and nuanced
Yep.
without being excusable. And yeah, and I mean, I think again, that's the thing that I was really impressed by from the beginning with this book is that this is a book about societies and systems more than it is about people being exceptional. Siona is a member of her society and she has agency within that, but she's not the super special snowflake that's going to that is different than everybody else. She still exists within that. And even just and one of the things also is that like she is so scared to do this big test. Like it's like the first two chapters are just her almost freaking out before she gets to this test. And I think that really helps you tie in to her character because she is also being accompanied by her cousin Alba.
Alba.
I'll say. Alba, who is like the stereotype that is always around with the more bookish nerdy character of like the more worldly like girl who's just enthusiastic about things. And Siona has been raised by Alba and her aunt. And she's kind of freaking out, and Alba's just like, "Oh, it's really cool to see all this stuff." And I think that helps kind of get you on her side is that she ain't shit. Like in another book, she would be saying girl boss lines, and this time, and in this one, she's like, "I just need to get in front of that typewriter, and I know I can do this, but I don't know if I can get to that point because I'm nervous."
And that's what I think makes the hard magic system work because it's not about sometimes like I think if this book tried to do a soft magic system where it was like you tapping into the energy and you know like that edges into special snowflake. Siona has studied her butt off. She has devoted herself with
women in STEM.
Like women in STEM style, but like to the point where like there's a point where she says she talks about how the men of her society like stepped on women to get where they needed to go, and she realized that she also was a boot that was stepping on the people around her to kind of get where she wanted to go for her academic purposes. But like she has studied so much, and there's that like the way the programming works for the spell mapping that her brain likes, and she's just applied herself, and she's like voracious. Like there's never a point where she gets to a discovery without having like spent days working at it in the library, doing things, making connections, and also walking the reader through how she got to that point. Like it's not the Sherlock BBC show where Sherlock goes into his mind palace and like words, and then he's like, "I figured it out." Like the book kind of walks you through a little bit more akin to like normal Sherlock Holmes, like the actual books, and it works really well. And I think the hard magic system allows you to be like, okay, this is just a girl who knows her shit. She has studied, and she's had to study harder, like a lot of women in STEM, to get where she is than the men around her. But because of that, she's kind of primed to be in the position she is. I will say, Chris M does bring up the point, and there are also a few forced situations in the latter half that felt like they were put in just to make a point rather than a natural part of the story. And there are a couple that we will get to that I will talk about. And there's one character, because you're right, Will, the author is quite nuanced. I thought Brigham also was one of the best parts of the book by the end, because it showed that you can have a character and make him nuanced. Because the whole time I was waiting for him to turn into a mustache twirling villain. And he just never does. Now, is there a mustache twirling villain?
Yeah.
Yes. But he's such
so
a
unnecessary to the plot too, is the funny part.
And he's so unnecessary. It's a sense where you could say she could have completely removed his character, but I loved there was something about his inconsequentialness. That if one scene had been taken out, I love the idea of this guy who is obsessed and thinks he's hot shit, and he just is so inconsequential to the total story. Like he's
Mm-hmm.
not even the main villain, you know. He's such a side character, but in his head, he is the big best, and I did like that as a like I like the idea of a character like that being treated that way. There was a couple of
Mm-hmm.
tweaks that I think could have worked to make it better, but also you absolutely can just remove him from the book and nothing fucking changes. Like
No, and it actually even streamlines the ending a little bit in a way that I thought was it needed to be streamlined a little bit.
yes.
But yeah, so she gets to the exam, and it's her turn. And basically, in the exam, the high mages ask you to do some stuff again with coding magic, and the person before her is like terrible at it, and she's like, "Oh, he could have done this and that." We should also note that she is some form of like,
On neurodivergent.
yeah. To be honest, I didn't really think that was a particularly well developed part of the book because it kind of just comes down to quirky academic in a lot of ways. Like I don't feel like the author really delved into it more than that. I don't think they really needed to, but I don't know. A lot of people have mentioned it, so we'll mention it. But basically, then it's her turn up to bat, and she's able to do really well. She's able to get all these spells, but at the end, she kind of thinks she's fucked up. And so afterwards, because she makes a cauldron rise higher and then hit the roof, and then she's gonna fix the spell, even though one of the proctors told her to stop. And she's like, "No, I got this," and she does it anyway.
I figured it out. I by failing, I figured out the.
And so she goes and hides in the bathroom afterwards, because that's the one place no men are gonna be. And then her mentor who comes up, and her mentor again, her mentor, I don't forget his name. I already forgot his name from when you said it as Brickham.
Brigham.
Brigham.
No T.
Brigham. He again. So you're introduced to him, and he's just like a champion for women. He's like, look, you got this. I know you're super talented. You're gonna show them that women do belong in the upper halls of power. Don't let anybody snuff out your light. You got this. And especially now, he's like, no, you didn't let me down. You did really great. You're gonna get in there. We're all very impressed by what you did. You know, only the other person could shut it down. And anyway, we're gonna be starting a new plan soon to expand the dome of Tehran in Iran, and so we're gonna need a lot of power from the other world for it, and that's your forte. So you're in, baby. You got this.
And this establishes a couple of things pretty quickly. Number one, she will put her solving a problem in her brain has figured out the answer and she needs to work it through. Like that will kind of take her over her so much that she will forget the basic rule of when a proctor says stop, you should probably just stop. And again, she got out of it because the archmage, like the archmage supreme, wasn't the one who told her to. But it very much sets up the idea that not like and you're completely correct. Well, she's nervous. She's human. She has a lot of she immediately throws up after the test. And she's been nauseous like the whole time. It's not like it was like, oops, quirky after she did the test kind of thing. It feels like very like you're waiting for that shoe to drop the whole time. And that she has 3 months to get together a mapping spell, which is how they get the energy
proposal.
from a proposal to present to help the expansion of the dome. All pretty high stakes, especially going in. And Brigham is a girl's guy. He's like, no one is better at that than you. And she also, we should mention, she's worked on industrial scale magic. Like that's what her background. She does industrial scale mapping work, which means she's working on the mapping spells or the mapping side of spells that pull energy from the other realm for industrial scale work. So she works with big numbers, large amounts of magic. And one of the other things I will say about this scene is so cool. Like the whole opening is really fun. It very quickly establishes how the magic is used, You learn through her watching other people what the pitfalls are in magic, how it fucks up, and how she is good at it, and how she's able to kind of work through the problems. And because it is concrete, you follow it, it makes sense, and you're like, yeah, girl, go get it. But later
And it
in the
helps that it doesn't overplay it.
yes,
There's a tension building for her to go towards it, and you are like, okay, I'm with her. I'm nervous as well. I'm in her skin. I want her to do good, and it helps that she doesn't have girl boss lines.
yep,
Because if she did, that would kind of start twisting you towards being contrary, or at least twisting me towards being contrary. It helps that no, she just wants to be good at this thing, and when she is good at it, that as a victory, you're like, fuck yeah. The book
yep.
doesn't outpace where you are with her, which is a problem a lot of these books have.
Um, you're completely correct, Will. And I will say, almost throughout the entire book, you're kind of just there with Siona as she's
Mm-hmm.
discovering things and doing things. Like the author is really good at that. But the other point I was going to make is that later you learn something that completely changes this entire testing scene to such a way where it becomes very eerie, and it is such a strong way to start, especially because Siona's last thing that she has to do requires a massive amount of energy that she has to pinpoint, and she overshoots it and then has to kind of dial it in. And once you get to the big twist, this scene is recontextualized in such a terrifying way where Siona is going to become very disgusted, and you yourself are like, I don't want that smoke. Like, what the fuck? What the fuck is this? And it just works really well. This author's openings, and I will say, because like the book has a nice mirror where it ends, like the opening scene of the Quen, the Kaldonai, our second main character Tomal's like family, the last of his tribe, running towards the barrier to get into Tehran, and then the ending scene mirror each other. It works in a way like she's really good at planting something and then picking it up later to kind of hit a beat,
Mm-hmm.
that I thought worked really well, and she's like pretty good about doing that throughout the book. But yeah, so after is there anything else you want to say about this section, Will?
No, I don't think so. One of the professors is a little too like patriarchy, but like it's fine. There's a variety of
Yes,
opinions on there, and that's
reactions.
nice to see.
Yeah,
Yeah, it wasn't too much.
and I will completely agree, because you're right. There is one guy who's like, meh, and then there's others who are like, oh, that's actually very interesting. And then there's this point where the meh one is like, she has to do this, and everybody's like, why are we gonna like? There are other
Yeah,
guys like, why would we ask her to do like this? And so you get this, and that's what in a lesser book, all of the men would
yeah.
fucking suck. Just all of
Mm-hmm.
them, and maybe outside Brigham, everyone would be like, fuck this girl and her, like it would be so, and they'd have to let her in on a technicality, but they didn't actually want to, versus what actually happens is they're like, oh yeah, babe, we're taking her.
Yeah.
We're taking her. I and it ends up working really well. So she gets in and she's like, woohoo! And she gets her white robe of a high mage. And I do have to explain, there's high mages and then there's archmages. High mages, they've passed the test. They're kind of like the step one. Archmage, I think there's only like 8 or 9 of them. So there's only ever 100 high mages. And then I think there's like 8 archmages. And as a spot opens up, that's what you get to. So like this year, there was only 2 spots. Only 2 people were going to be able to get in, because I think
Mm-hmm.
one guy died and one guy got promoted. But that's about it. And she now has her high mage robes. She's hot shit. And then she goes in for her first day of work as a high mage. And oh no, the patriarchy.
It's a boys' club.
It's a boys' club, and in a way where like she thought, like once you get to that level, it's just she's like, they're just gonna be excited about, like, we can all just be excited nerds together. Like she thought she
Mm-hmm.
was just gonna, and part of that show is because Brigham has been her mentor and has been under her wing, and she's had a bit of a privileged position with that. And here he's not actively here, and Um, you have one real dick, and then you have some other guys that aren't dicks to her faces, but have been talking shit behind her back, kind of thing. And it's just like, they're basically like, we don't expect anything of you. We know you had to, and then someone's like, we know you had to sleep with someone to get this position, and she's like, yo, fuck you guys. And then there's this janitor who happens to be hanging around, and he was cleaning. And Renthorn is the grossest of the gross. He's the worst of the worst of the men.
He
And
hath a mustache.
he hath a mustache. He do be twirling, and
Have mustache will twirl.
yes, exactly. Renthorn. Listen, if I was the author, I would absolutely just have a shirt. Renthorn, have mustache will twirl.
No, you can't. Now it's going to be one for the channel. I'm going to talk to Val about doing merch. We also had a good suggestion yesterday, which is never skip prose day. Like a popping emoji.
Oh my god, I love that. Oh, we really should do some merch.
I know she's a graphic designer and she won't do it. Everybody on the Discord pressure her. And so one of the nice things about when she meets Tommel, who is this Quinn janitor, is that it is done in a not. They don't lock eyes and feel a shiver. It really feels like he's an NPC that she's just running into for a minute. And if you know he isn't because you read the prologue, but if you hadn't read that, it would just feel very natural. And that's one of the things that makes it feel real is the casualness of it. And even the way that she's just kind of racist about him being there. Like, does he even know where things are? Or she's like, oh, he doesn't smell. That's weird.
Yeah, he smells good. He's not dirty like the rest of them. Like he smells like herbs and cleaner, you know. Yeah. Literally, Chris M. Yep, she's like, wow, he doesn't stink. And because like she doesn't know where she's going. Nobody gave her a map, and she has to ask the janitor. And so she's walking, and so when she confronts the group of boys will be boys, she's got him standing there. And it is so because like there's almost a moment where you're like, is this the guy from the opening? Because you're not sure until somebody calls him Tommy. And you're like, oh, this is 100% the guy from the start. And
Labe says, by the way, I totally read the smelling nice line as a start to romance. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's not like you can't see it coming because, again, you also know who he is from the prologue, but it's a lot more subtle than a lot of the books we've read in this account. Yeah. Like, it does feel a lot more like just you met an NPC. Oh, wait, an NPC is a real person. Yeah. Wait, NPCs in this world are people.
And Leb also says 100% missed the subtext. Oops, and the subtext of she comes in thinking all the Quen smell and are stinky boys, and then she's like, "Wow, this one actually smells good." And so it really was that kind of like initial, just like you immediately get you. And I don't want to say I enjoyed it, but I was glad that Siona was a product of her environment.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, and that she was racist, and I was like, great, I'm so excited to see a character actually work through this and like have to confront their biases in a realistic way. And not to say that you get all of that from that first interaction, but you do immediately go, oh, she buys the propaganda. Like she is.
You know what it is? It reminds me of in Shogun and how much I love that Anjin was just like from the minute go, he was like, fuck Catholics. Catholics are an enemy number one. I came to Japan to fuck up Catholics and chew gum, and they don't have any gum here. Like it's something that is like it's so like if this was like about black people, it wouldn't be funny. But because this is such a not real race that they're being racist about, there's something a little funny about it. I found, and you can look at it and go like, oh, okay, she's gonna get her comeuppance later in the book to figure this out. Oh, yeah, no, sorry, I'm reading the side a second.
No, it's fine.
Yes. But, so basically, Renthorn, Mr. Mustache Twirler, is like, we don't have any assistants open right now. Unless, here, why don't you have the Quinn as your assistant?
The janitor.
She's like, oh, he's, I'm not going to let him demean me in this way. Like, I'm not going to give in to the joke. Here, Quinn, dude, come to my office with me. And they go to the office, and the Quinn is like, okay, I can leave quietly now. Like now that because he knows it was an insult, and he knows she was just putting it up, and that to me was it's a very real sexist interaction in this kind of like when you're confronted by this boys club making fun of you in a way that's kind of plausibly deniable. How do you handle that? How do you don't? It felt very Mad Men-y in that way, in terms of like it felt feels very real and it's not exactly subtle, but it feels realer than a lot of the like, oh, women can't do things kind of way and having to fit in. And the choices that you have to make to be either like, if she had rejected it, it'd be like, oh, women can't take a joke. And she inherently knows that she can't do that, which is just a level more complex than what we normally get.
And also, it shows the like quiet observation of Tommel as, and not because he's an exceptional person, but because by nature of being Quen in a society that like he has to be hyper vigilant in assessing situations. And so when she's like, I can't let them see they've got to me, I'm just gonna take like carry like Tommel knows, like he, as Will said, he gets there and he's like, okay, I can. And then in a moment, she's like, you know what? I don't work well with other people. I will need someone to help with basic stuff. Be my assistant. And he's like, and she's like, just unpack the books, like that. And he's like, oh, okay.
And she's like, can you read? And he's like, I know some letters. And it's again one of these moments where it's like, oh, okay, a little subtly racist there.
Yeah. And like they're the process, but like of the two of them kind of butting against each other in this very first part is very interesting. But she basically decides, they've discounted her, but also she doesn't work well. She's not a group project girl, and she's gonna use this Quen assistant to just figure her shit out and have him do some basic things. And so she asks him like, hey, like, I will train you, give you basic stuff. Do you want to be my assistant? And he's like, I don't know if you can do that. Like, that's Renthorn decides. And she was like, but he already said it. Like, he said the thing. So if I work off of that, nobody can be like, oh, that's not what like he said it in front of other people. There are witnesses. And she even steals him an assistant's lab coat. And at the end of their first day together is a little rough. And at the end of it, all the other boys club boys go to take the new other something Mordra. Farron Mordra. He was a legacy hire where he was not a good applicant. He was the one during the test where like he was shit. Like he shouldn't have made it to be a high mage, but his dad, like he's Mordra the 10th. His father was Mordra the 9th. They've all been mages. This guy was going to be a high mage. So he was the legacy hire to her merit hire. And all the other boys are like, Mordra, let's take you for your first day as a high mage drink. Let's get you some alcohol. And as Tommel is getting ready to leave. At this point, she just keeps calling him Tommy. He hasn't told her what his real name is. He's like, do you want to go get a drink, ma'am? Like, it was your, and she's like, her first reaction is kind of insulted that this Quen would think she needed the sympathy of a drink. And he was like, I'm so sorry. I thought you deserved because it is a conversation that he, like she's the first female high mage ever. And he was like, I just thought, I'm so sorry. And then she was like, okay. Cause she realizes the feeling and like, cause he ends up like kind of receding into himself a bit cause he's very stone faced. And she's like, oh, I have now insulted him. I was insulted. And she goes, why don't we go to a bar together and we each buy ourselves drinks?
Because she almost says that, and I'll buy drinks, and then she's like, "Oh wait, no, that's racist too. That to think he doesn't have money." And it's good because again, there's a very real sense that like of social barriers between them. One of the things you'll realize about Tommel is that he has very much a sense of the invisible rules in their society of like, don't make noise, don't make waves. Don't get above your station or it will cause problems. And that's one of the things that Siona realizes is one of these invisible rules she just doesn't seem to really get when it comes to the Quen because she's just never thought about it. So they go to a bar, which is like a semi-Quen bar. And the bartender there is like, "Ooh, we got a female mage here. That's super cool. You guys drink for free." And then what happens is that Moira Quirk gets to do a drunk voice, and it's so great because Siona gets so
Siona
drunk.
gets wasted. And she's really pissed because she spent her life making sure she could drink as much as her male counterparts, but she wasn't ready for the constitution of the Quen / Celtic coded people who, like, Tommel has been drinking with her drink for drink, but he is fine. And it's at this point where she says, you can call me Freynan, which is her last name. And he's like, okay, well, in that case, will you call me Tommel? That's my actual name. Tommy is my, like, anglicized name.
Code switching.
Yeah. And she's like, yeah. And she also, she gets so drunk that she starts trying to, like, show him stuff. And he was like, can we please not do this here? Like, this makes no sense. And he ends up having to take her back to because he doesn't know where she lives and he can't take her back there. So he takes her back to the and they end up having they end up having, like, very almost like a frank conversation. And one of the things she walks away with from this is that she was too familiar with Tommel because she was drunk. But he takes her back to the office. He sets her up on the cot she has in her room, and he fucks off. And the next morning, she wakes up, and she's like, drinks some magic tea that makes her less hungover. And she's like, let's get to work, baby. And we can't actually go into too much detail about what happens in this section because it's basically that character study.
Well, okay, so basically one thing to explain about the magic is that the issue is that they draw power from the other realm, but they can't really do it very precisely because they can't see there, so they just kind of have to pick. It's like a game of Battleship. Like, they kind of just have to try to figure out what's there through a very hazy thing, and that's why it's inconsistent.
Scale. Like, it's not very bright, and you have to find particular energy signatures, but because it's grayscale and it's fuzzy, you might think you're getting this much energy, but you're actually getting this much energy, or you think you're getting this much and you're getting this much.
Right. And she says, I'm really good at mapping. And the other thing is that, like, the original, I think Leonin is the name of their Jesus figure. So basically, Leon, he founded the city to stop the blight and the cold. Though, as they point out later, it's interesting because the blight didn't actually start till after the city was there. So maybe it was... That's a little funky. I wonder what's up with that. He had
a vision of the blight, William. He was given a divine vision by God. Like, so yeah, he found the city before the blight actually started. That's how protecting your people and having divine visions work. Get it together.
And basically, there's this kind of funny thing how there's two sects in their religion, where one of them says you have to follow his rules, and then one of them says you have to follow the rules of the guy who came after him, which is like a very classic split in religions of where exactly do we stop with, like, who gets to say what. Basically, she's part of the religious sect that doesn't think you have to listen to the guy who followed him, I kept thinking of the guy who followed him as Paul, like in the Bible, and that, like, Paul kind of made up a bunch of shit that everybody had to follow, whereas she's more like, okay, we just have to follow what Jesus says. And one thing I really like is that, in a lot of fantasy, it's the magic users are like, they're oppressed, or they're the advisor to kings, but it's never like they're the ones in control, even though they're the ones with the supernatural powers. If some people have naturally occurring supernatural powers, they should always be in power. And in this case, it doesn't quite work that way. It's more of a knowledge thing, but they are the ones in power. And you get the sense that, they have now a bit of a democracy, kind of like a House of Lords, so to speak. But it's mentioned really early on that, like, they can kind of fix elections if they want. Like, we'll figure it out. And so there is a kind of nice, like, okay, they're in charge, but there is kind of a democracy involved as well. And they're also the ones who just really run the city, like the electrical grid, so to speak. And it's... Yeah, and I liked also that there's not like a separate priest class, because again, if you have all the power, then, like, you get to be the priests, and the fact that it's tied up with the religion, I think, really works. We're going to run into a little bit of a problem that the religion is not quite as... in this first half, it's treated very Fantasylandia religion, and then in the second half, there's a lot of people actually believing their religion, but it feels a little bit like she didn't believe it here at the beginning quite as much, or you just didn't assume she did. One of the things I liked about Wolf Hall and also
Bring up the bodies.
another ones we had read. Yeah, and then another one is that like you got a real sense of people actually believed in their religion, whereas a lot of times because we're such a secularized society, when people are writing books about previous ages, they just kind of assume people are as baseline atheist as we are. And so in this case, I kind of felt like that could have been explored more. But one thing that I did enjoy is that even as later on she's going to become more disillusioned with her society, she never really leaves her religion. She still believes in the principles of it quite a lot and the principles of it. And like, you know, because there's all this stuff about truth and like you have to follow and do good and stuff like that. And so even as she kind of like will complicate her relationship with it, she still holds on to it. And that makes a lot more sense than just her like converting and leaving it behind.
Exactly. And taking on, because you are given a different religious structure, which is the Quen, and each of the different Quen tribes have different gods and stuff, so it's not a unified religion by any means, but they're all like, okay, like all the different Quen tribes are like, you have your
This is
gods,
part
we
of the
have
problem.
ours.
Well, this is the part of the problem with the Quen is that the Quen really should be super racist towards each other, in the way that minorities often are super racist against each other. But and when if you have a bunch of tribal people, they don't really consider themselves part of the same culture a lot of the times, really. But anyway, going back to their founder, he founded the city, and then but you're not allowed to like look. You're not allowed to do certain things with magic that would make it easier to look at the other realm.
Yeah.
And so that's what she keeps running into, is that she can't source power consistently enough because she can't see clearly.
And so what she's trying to do is find a spell to make seeing the power signatures clearer. And there's a couple of things we learned very quickly, because as she's explaining basic magic to Tommel, we learned some of the stuff. Number one, they use coordinates to find the portion, because they're little spellagraphs, which are these typewriters that have these like wire, like a circle on top of it, and that's what lights up and shows you the different sections of the other realm, and that's where you can see the power. And she's like, certain areas are kind of dead for power, certain areas have stuff. And then there's also he asks for it because she says pick two numbers and look at the coordinates, and he says one and she's like, oh, we can't do that, those are part of the forbidden coordinates. And she's like, it's just part of the religion, you can't anything from like these numbers to these numbers, you can't do anything within there. The last guy that did was a crazy dark magic user, and he had to be killed. And he used magic to kill his enemies, which was a huge no-no. That's not supposed to happen. Hecking bad time. So we know there's forbidden coordinates, and there's also within the basic imaging spells that allows them to see that fuzzy grayscale version of the other realm where they can look at the energy. There are some lines in there that are sacred lines that you can't fuck with. You're not supposed to remove them. You're not supposed to fuck around with shit. And through their back and forth and her teaching them, eventually Tommel makes the point where I know some of the letters that your spell system is written in, like the code, the basic individual keys. I'm familiar with them. There's this one tribe of Quen. They wrote in this. My brother-in-law, who is dead, he wrote his name like this. And she's like, holy shit, that's our thing. And he was like, yeah, they're from this one mountain range. And then she was like, oh, that's the mountain range where our guy Leon, the founder, he went and he got the sacred text. The sacred texts were given, like what's his face on the Moses on the mountain being given the 10 commandments. Like it's kind of like the religious stories like that. Mm-hmm. And he was like, Tom was like, I'm pretty sure he just stole the magic, because like those people, and he makes the point, he was like, you guys aren't the only one, like lots of Quen women were witches, like, and did magic, and those mountains were particularly rich in magic ladies. And she was like, no, listen, he went there, God gave him the stuff. And he was like, And they kind of
But she's also like, oh, women magic. I like that.
yes.
That's cool.
And she was like, why women? Why not men? And he was like, because the men were out hunting and taking shit down, and the women, had time. And so there were men who did magic. Like if you were older or you had like a limp or something that you couldn't go do that other stuff, then yeah, you got taught magic. But in general, it was taught to women because they were like the stable ones. And she starts looking for records of magic by Quen women, and they call it mirror magic, where they're able to open up windows. And one lady even says, and this is your first inkling, there's this one lady who says she opens up the windows so she can keep an eye on her boys when they're out hunting, and she uses it to see them. And then there's this other lady who looks into like other fantastic like places that nobody had ever seen before. But it's so clear that, and she's like, okay, they must be opening up, like same with us on our cinegraphs, they must be doing that, but they're getting clear images. They're described as mirrors or windows, and we're not getting that. How do I get that? And then she connects it with one of the founding mages. So there's Leon, and then one of Leon's disciples was this guy, Stavros. It wasn't Stavros. That's very Greek. But anyway, he was a half Quen kid. His mother was half Quen. His mother was Quen, and he was raised with her, and he learned magic from her, and then got taken in by Leon and started doing stuff. And his mapping spells were considered some of the best. They were really good, but no one in modern days can read it. The way he wrote stuff was weird, and he did everything by handwriting, and the way he did stuff was weird. And so she studies the crap out of his work, and then is able to take his work and some of the modern mapping spells and create a very clear, crisp, still grayscale image of the other realm. Super clear. She's like, hot freaking damn. And then she was like, Tommel, you were right. These Quen women did know shit. And look what.
Well, what happens is he shows up after she hasn't slept for 3 days working on this.
Yes.
And she's like, no, I got this. There's plenty of coffee. I still can do this.
Yeah.
But you're right. They could do this and we can see it. And now we're going to be able to see the other world, and we can, channel really efficiently.
Because he had told her, why don't you remove those lines? If those lines are doing stuff to obscure things, why don't those lines that the old dead guy did, just stop doing them? And she was like, no. We have to work. The whole point of the magic system is that we work within the bounds set to us by God. Like,
and he's like, but your God also said to seek truth, and you're also not the majority. You're not Catholic. You're Protestant, so it's okay if you do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And she's like, yeah, but we got to play it a little cool because of the Catholics.
But then she gets so excited when she makes that really sharp image where it's much easier to see the signatures. She's like, fuck it. Truth it is, boys. And she removes the lines of the sacred text spell, and she sees a window into the other realm. And it is a forest in winter. There be deer. There's a burbling brook. There's leaves rustling, and she's like, yo, the other realm is so pretty. I've never seen snow. I've only read about it before. And our boy Tommel is like, oh, no. Oh, no. And you and Tommel, you're on the same page where you're like, oh, no. No. And she goes, what is it? And he goes, that is the Quen. That is I've been in that land. That is the land. And she's like, no, the other realm is another realm. It's not here. It's elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And also, he gets so mad when he makes this realization. He throws her stenograph. He throws it across the hall. It shatters. And he's just fucking livid.
Yeah, and he because he's just pale, and so he runs out all mad. I think they see that.
Yeah, no. So she says, I'm gonna try use something, and she targets a bush, or she puts in the thing and she targets it, and then a bush unravels before her. And he recognizes it as blight, because one of the things we haven't mentioned is blight didn't just rip people apart, it ripped the animals apart, it ripped the plants apart. You had a field of wheat, and now the wheat's gone because it got hit with some blight. And he realizes that the blight is the physical manifestation of the mages siphoning magic from the other realm, which is just anything not inside Tehran.
Tehran, yeah. Any other place in Iran is the other realm.
The other
The
realm.
joke I'm making here, by the way, is that Tehran is spelled differently than Tehran, but it's pronounced the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's real pissed. He stomps off. She follows him. They have an argument. This is the part where there's a great line where she's like, she puts up a lot with him, but ultimately, you're wrong about your religion. My religion is the right one. I put up with a lot of this shit for you, but you're in the end wrong. And it's nice because it's kind of is one of those thoughts that she didn't necessarily need to articulate beforehand, but would have been in the back of her mind of this is fun, but you're wrong. You're not right about this.
There was an earlier stage where he told her, because they were talking about, his religion, because she asked, don't you believe in, and he was like, I don't believe in your God. Obviously this stuff is happening, but he's not my God. And also, and she asked something about it, and he was like, you and our morality systems are different. And so they have talked about their different religions and stuff. So in this moment, she's literally thinking of all of those conversations being because he's like, you're the fucking blight. You are the reason my family is dead, the fields are dying, that I even had to come here. This entire system is built off of the death of the Quen and the landscape, the people, the animals. And she's like, no, you're wrong. God wouldn't do that. God is very good. This is a gift. The mages are she's clinging because to acknowledge, and it's one of those moments where people struggle with this even on a day-to-day basis, to acknowledge the harm of the system is to acknowledge the part you played within it. And that is such a terrifying, on a human day-to-day level, thing for a lot of people, that it is much easier to blinders and continue believing the wrong thing or staying within the destructive system because it shatters the belief that you're a good person.
Mm-hmm.
That what you
and that is just mentally
good.
So destabilizing. You will use almost any justification to keep away from it, and even start justifying really terrible actions because you have to. It almost serves as a Rubicon. Yeah, I'll talk about more about that later with some of the other characters. But yeah, and there's a very nice kind of throughout this section. She keeps kind of jumping from one justification to another as they collapse under her. Of and not just in this part, but the next part as well, where she's like, no, that's not true. But if it is, he must have had a good reason.
Yep.
Or, he saw it coming and his intentions. And really, God said this. And she flip-flops around about it a lot. Yeah, it's a really good moment. And it culminates with her slapping him and telling him, you can't talk to me that way. Yeah. A very clear setting of no, we are Tyrion and Quen.
And you exist
not here.
And it is so powerful because she likes Tommel. And I'm not talking about on a romantic level. By this point, the two of them are kind of oh, wow, look at that person.
Oh, isn't she so small?
Yeah. But just as people, they like each other. And there's a bunch of moments where they pretend to not notice that hands are staying a little, but I will say it is really nicely in the background of what is happening, where I can say that this book is not a romance. Does it have a romance in it? Yes. Would I classify it as a romance? I myself would not. It is very much it's part of the book, but it is more periphery to what is actually happening. But they like each other's people, and she likes him as a person. She enjoys working with him. He has become part of her process, and she finds him challenging her. There's this part earlier where they have an argument, and he says, I can be civil or I can be honest. I cannot be both. And she has to come to terms with what she is what kind of relationship they have to have. And she realizes that his honesty and challenging is more of benefit, even if it upsets her, than having him to just be civil and respectful. And also Saint Jen and Miss Allie Snow have the point. Did they have the conversation about intention versus outcome by this point? I love how that kept coming back up in the second half of the book. There's this point where when Tommel is illustrating the difference between their religious morality systems, he makes the point that a man who has had good intentions his whole life but has only brought harm versus a man who has had bad intentions his whole life but brought good out through that and it uses a couple, like the one who had good intentions but brought a ton of harm is going to go to hell, versus in her religion where as long as your intentions are good, you're a good person, buddy. Um, and
Which
that
I felt like that A felt a little too cleanly separated. It doesn't
I
really make
agree.
sense with like the pagan ideas that he would have from a religion. It's like really not how pagan religions work. And also like it then also doesn't make sense with how much she talks about how he must have had a good reason for doing what he was doing. Like you feel like it should maybe have been the other way around or something like that. Like I didn't love that. That was one of the
Yeah.
parts of the book that I felt was like a little unsubtle.
It is unsubtle, but where I found that it did work is that later in the book, she kept questioning her intentions or like acknowledge. And so, like, this is here a bit like it's a bit of a blunt instrument, just like thrown into here so that in the back half, it forces her to confront the fact that just because her intentions were good does not absolve her of the legitimate impacts she has had. And I do wish that came from a different conversation or that it happened
Mm-hmm.
differently. Then it does play out, but I do like how it is, like the interrogation of intentions is done in the later half of the book. But anyway, so they heckin' dispute. And she goes about her business, and then she ends up, I don't know if it's hers or someone else's, but she ends up finding a stenograph, and she goes back to.
No, she goes back to her room first to check. Before that there had been a whole thing with a different stenograph, but she at this point she goes back to her room and is like, all right, let me test this. I'm a scientist.
Yeah.
So she ends up finding a group of people in her mirror by the ocean, and she writes a spell and she watches a girl's arm come off because
And she
of her
tries.
spell.
Oh yeah, she has a backup in the office because he threw hers.
Right.
And she tries to abort the spell so it doesn't kill the girl, and then she ends up with this girl just dying on the beach with half of her body like separated and like half, and it's just this horrific scene, and she just has to like watch as this girl slowly dies on the sand. And the other thing about it is these people have black hair, and apparently where they're from you have brown haired green eyed people, and then you have gray eyed copper haired people, and there's no black haired people around.
Insane, but okay.
But it's also by the ocean because she picked like really far off coordinates, and she realizes because there's this point where he says, don't you realize the forbidden coordinates, it's a circle, it's Tehran and everything around it, which means the reserve. And she puts this together. He had put it together, but she puts it together. So in Tehran, there is a section of the spell map that we thought was just the random other realm that is called the reserve, where it is always firing and pulling energy, and that the city just kind of auto runs on. And she realizes that the reserve is it is right outside the barrier, and it's that thing like for like let's say 100 yards before the barrier all around that is just constantly pulling energy. So that is the part of the that when at the beginning of the book Tommel's family had to run that gauntlet through that terrible place where there was a lot of blight. That's the reserve. They got eaten up to be the reserve power that powered the hot water.
And every Quinn who has gotten into the city has had to go through this place, this barrier that eats them essentially on purpose.
Yeah.
And empowers things. And so, yeah, by seeing that, it's like there's an ocean and this person with black hair, she's like, oh, wait, this is everywhere. It's not, because one of her justifications had been like, well, this is kind of a punishment for the Quinn who didn't come to our great city and join our religion. And she's like, oh, no, it's not that. It's everyone. Like, it doesn't. That isn't one of the justifications that works.
The people with black hair weren't even part of because like the whole point is when Leon made his great city, he was like, if you come into my city and you accept my religion, then you will not be affected by the terribleness. And the Quen leaders were like, my guy, that sounds kind of crazy. What are you talking about? No, we're not doing that. And then she was like, but that black-haired girl's ancestors are not Quinn, so they didn't make the choice for her. So, and it is just such a revelation. And it just, again, at this point, you as a reader are like that test where she had to tap into that massive amount of energy. How many people did she kill? in that moment. And it just completely recontextualizes her success during the test or the failed spells. The one guy, Mordra, he failed a bunch of things. And it's like that waste of life
Mm-hmm.
for a like failed. Oh, it's a real gutting, and it questions a lot of the stuff. The blight as punishment, it's not a punishment. It is literally caused by them. The blight was not a thing that Leon got warning of. He caused it. And so everything that their religion has kind of based themselves under has, as far as how the magic works, is just completely wrong. I will say, Will's correct. She doesn't throw it off completely. She still thinks there's a way to be a mage and to use the system for
Right.
good.
Well, what happens next basically is that she like has a womanly breakdown and starts screaming a lot and like can't
The
function
new moon,
essentially.
as Chris M referred to it in her final thoughts, the new moon part of the book.
Yeah, where she can't handle it and her professor shows up, her mentor, and she has to explain what's happening, and she's like, "Oh my god." And he's like, "Oh, I know what happened. You ran into a curse." She's like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, that evil mage, he did some weird shit and he left curses around for people. We don't talk about it, but one of the really bad things he did was he messed around with the forbidden coordinates and then he killed a bunch of other people using magic inside the city." So like, and so she's like, "Okay, so was it a deception or something?" And he's
Yeah.
like,
And she wants to believe him. She wants to, but then she's like, but if he was targeting rivals, why would my stenograph? And also, my stenograph was made after he died. And like she can't turn off the analytical part of her brain because he's offering her a way out that a lot of other people who are less logical and like
truth demanding
would just take and go, it was a curse. That one's on me, guys.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Tough.
But she doesn't. She pretends she does, and he sends her home. And she really has where she's like not eating, she's crying, and she's like.
So one of the things that I wish the book had emphasized a little bit more is she hasn't slept in about 3 days. Yes. So there's an extent to which her complete emotional anguish right now is the revelation, but also some of it she just hasn't slept. Because one of the criticisms I saw levied against this book is that it's a very white savior woman kind of like narrative, right? Like we're supposed to care so much about how much she cares about the suffering of others, where it's decentering their suffering to recenter on her or whatever. And like she's suffering here to show us how good of a person she is. But I think a lot of it also is just like she just hadn't slept. Like it's actually pretty much that simple. She can't quite figure out how to get all this stuff to fit in her brain. She's also being taken care of by her cousin and her aunt. One thing we should say is that like there has been a little bit of her relationship with them, and it's quite nice because it's meant to be there to show that she isn't like other girls. Like there would normally be a kind of like this character would be a not like other girls, but these characters are there so that she doesn't appreciate them at first, but then she grows to appreciate domestic labor and the fact that they didn't have to let her do this woman's emancipation thing. They did this because they loved her. And that is actually a lot more valuable than she realized. And she needs to recognize what other people have done for her.
And it really is a fantastic point that like she couldn't have done any of this if she was expected to do any of the other, like they took on all the day-to-day labor of, and it really connects. There's somebody in the thread made the point of Siona having to realize how much of men's thought process and behavior she had internalized, so not realizing that the work that her aunt and cousin did allowed her, like she, again, the boot metaphor of she was stepping on their labor to get where she needed to go and to allow and give herself the space to do it. And I did really like the relationship with her aunt and with Alba, but the other problem I had with this is that her aunt, like, so Siona, because
this is the part where the book starts to fall apart.
This is things start getting a little shaky over here, and I will say I don't mind a character whose entire view of herself has been shaken, because Siona is very ego driven and has believed to be a person in the right, seeking truth, doing all the right things, and so finding this out given who Siona is, I completely can see someone having a complete and total breakdown about it, especially after 3 days of no sleep, like, because her ego has been like, the ego blow is huge here. But she's panicking, and it's been like a day. Like, she's only been home a day, not sleeping, crying, okay? And her aunt's like, "Oh my god, we have to call the alchemist." And the alchemist is a like doctor mage, and like, hysterical woman, why not try lobotomy? And I'm like,
That's a bit
really?
drastic.
Really? Really? And also, as a woman, knowing that's what happened to other women, Aunt Winnie, why are we calling the alchemist?
Like that, because what happens is there's a little epistolary parts before each chapter, and before this one is the one talking about lobotomies on women, and so it's not directly stated, but it's like, actually, I think Alba is actually like, no, this could really happen. You need to, need to be normal.
100%. Alba's like, bitch, I need you. They're gonna, like, you can have a brain or you cannot have a brain. You need to get your shit together. So this is like an established, like, you need to stop acting crazy, otherwise somebody's gonna do shit. And what I don't love about it is, like, for a period of time where, like, we have a woman counselor, like our first woman counselor, we've created our first woman high mage. This just feels like such a. And also, I don't understand why Winnie. Now, if one of the other mages, like if Renthorn or one of the other mages had been like, "Oh, we're sending an alchemist to check on her. She didn't seem to be doing good." Okay. But for Aunt Winnie to be like, "Ah, yes, it's been a day and she's been crying a lot, and oh no, let's get the alchemist who might lobotomy." Like, women should be terrified of this. And
yeah, it's very weird. And the thing is, if it should either be something where Alba also isn't afraid of it because they just don't know or they don't think it's possible, or she should. Like, that's the thing, is there should not be such a big gap in knowledge between Alba and Winnie on this.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Miss Allie Snow does make the comment. To be fair, Siona did try jump out a window. I don't know if Aunt Winnie was there for that though.
But even if so, like, it's still kind of a drastic. And the other problem is that this part is not good in the book. So what happens is that basically, like, the alchemist shows up and she's kind of pulled herself together and she, like, has a talk with him where she's just very quirky and manic, thinking through these problems while telling him, like, "Oh no, you can't do this because actually you had another of your patients kill yourself, so I'll kill myself and then that'll look bad for you. So instead I'm going to monologue to you about my thoughts on this situation. I feel terrible, but isn't that kind of like an energy source for action? And that's the thing that I need to do for the rest of this book." And it feels too self-consciously quirky, and not really like very organic. It's like, you're trying a little too hard here.
And you're right. It does. The entire conversation also just doesn't feel like her. Like, she's really, like, spicy in the scene. And I'm like, you were just on the floor, ma'am. Like, I'm okay with her having this revelation of, okay, this is an energy and I just need to apply it. Like, or do what you always do. Find a solution. Whatever, just find a solution and throw yourself at it. I would have been more okay with, but having this, like, the whole conversation with and also you could have removed the whole conversation with the alchemist and just had her be like, "I'm just going to work. It's the only thing I can do to keep my sanity." And you as a reader would have been like, "Yep, that sounds like Siona. That feels right. That feels like exactly what she would do." And so it is just one of the, like, weird things that happened. Now someone did ask, does didn't this happen to the baker's son? No, the baker's son wasn't lobotomied. There's a whole story that she learns where this one, the baker down the street, who kind of has a crush on Siona, not that she's ever realized it, but their eldest son went to be a guard at the border, at the barrier, and he saw some shit. It fucked him up. Nom style. And the alchemist was trying to, like, help him through some stuff, and he ended up,
unaliving.
And so there's this, like, bad taste about, like, the alchemist and the whole process. But she decides, like Will said, she's like, "I am energy and I'll just apply this terrible feeling towards good." And again, I don't think we needed this to play out like this. I think there's much simpler ways to get to the
Yeah, it
purpose.
feels like a thing that like the author came up with as an idea and then just kept, even though it doesn't organically fit
Mm-hmm.
anymore, and it just feels very whimsical. And so after this, though, she goes and speaks to Tommel, and she goes to Tommel's like ghetto, and this is where we find out that Tommel actually raised his niece, and she is now a fiery-haired Irish woman who has like a temper, and he tells her about this whole thing.
Yeah, he literally went home and told Kara everything.
This 15-year-old, and the book tries to do a lot with like how he raised her, and he feels guilty because he tried to make her, since she was the last of his tribe, he didn't want to let her assimilate as much as would be safe for her. And this is almost well done. It's not that it's poorly done, but we're going to talk more about the overall Quinn issues in this book. But it's not bad. And so they have a meeting where she's like, "Look, I think this is true now, but you know what? There's no way people know about this. That's insane. They would not be murdering people for electricity. I'm gonna go talk to my mentor. And the thing is, with my new scrying spells, we can just avoid people." And he's like, "This is not gonna go well. If it looks like." You need to play along if it looks like he knows.
And also, like, if you just avoid killing people, you're still going to have to kill the animals, kill the food. What are the Quen supposed to eat? You're still destroying the landscape. You're not, like, just by not taking human life doesn't mean human lives aren't going to be lost. But yeah, he's like, listen, if the guy, like, whatever bullshit they start spilling, you got to follow it, because otherwise, you might not be coming back from this. And she's like, don't worry, nobody knows. The institution is built on good. I tried to, like, do my hands the other way, but my cold arm. The institution is built on good, and so nobody could know, because then they wouldn't do it. We're a unambiguous good in society. And Kara tries to stab her, which is very funny. And he's like, "No, don't stab the mage." And she's like, "Fuck the mage." And she ends up going to Brigham. And I like this scene because Brigham this is one of those moments where you think, oh, he's going to turn into a mustache twirling villain. And he doesn't. He did know, but he's like, this is such a terrible thing to discover. He's like, I remember when it happened to me. It was devastating.
I'm sorry you figured it out so early. Usually you have more time to get into figuring it out. It's it's really hard. A lot of people thought because you were a woman, you wouldn't be able to handle the truth when you got there, but I believe in you. And she like starts like arguing with him about it, and he retreats into like a lot of religious arguments, which is not something he's really done before. So you get the real sense that he's justifying this to himself in a way that, like, yeah, again, you expect him at this point to be like, the queen of trash, who cares? And it's not like that, which is it's so refreshing.
It
really shows how institutions make people bad more so than moral judgments of their own.
And also the you have your orders, you have the expectations, you work within the system, and the entire system is doing it, so it's a shared guilt. And also, like, this is the expectation, and you can justify the good of your people versus the having to use other people, and it really works. I thought Brigham was such a good example of how to show someone as a bad person, but who wants to be a good person and who is trying very hard to convince themselves. And also, because there's a point where you realize that Brigham is trying to overcome the ways where he feels he has failed, and trying to, like, save his own soul a bit in his own mind. And it's just such a great example of, like, yeah, people can do terrible fucking things if their justification feels right.
Well, it also shows the damage you do to yourself by maintaining yourself in these systems. I mean, that's one of the things that kind of was shown with the baker's son, which is that, like, yes, he was a privileged person, but it caused him psychological harm to oppress other people. Brigham has hollowed himself out. You know, these are the wages of privilege, which is not like, you know, the thing we should necessarily be focusing on the most, but is an important part of the dynamic. Though I feel like the book goes a little heavy in that with him.
Yes.
More so that, like, later on, especially, you're a little bit like, I don't know. I think he was fine. I don't think he felt that bad about himself.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say, I would say that you don't need to take that extra step further. I would say like this level that we get out of this scene, because you get the feeling that he did genuinely believe in Siona and her progress, and that she could do this. Like, as far as like a mentor within the system, he was a good mentor to her. Like, it's not like he was secretly like, ha, plotting her. Because again, a lesser book would have been like, you stupid woman, everyone was right. And he's like, no, you had it happened too soon. If you had found out later, you know, like there's a I don't know. I thought that part worked.
Yeah, there's it's I've been thinking lately about funnily enough, something Jenna Moresi said about writing, which is that, like, you know, bad guys don't actually need a tragic reason to be bad. Sometimes people are just bad. And I think that's both true and untrue. I think on an institutional level, people don't need a reason to be bad. Lots of very good people do awful things because of the institution and the system, but to be interpersonally bad, usually you need a traumatic thing to have happened. In real life, most people who are interpersonally awful to each other have gone through something really horrible, whereas you can be a great person and be super racist or whatever. And I think Brigham kind of nicely puts a pin on that, in that, like, nothing tragic happened to him, but he's still a bad person because he just follows what society says.
Yep.
Oh, so yeah, we'll get to that in a second, Miss Ellis. No.
Yeah.
So basically, she's like, "Oh, okay, I accept this now," and she goes back to Thomas and is like, "Okay, Thomas, we gotta fuck shit up."
Thomas.
Tommel.
Tommel.
And this is the part where I'm going to start talking and ranting about the Quinn for a while, and how this part of the book doesn't totally make sense. So, up to this point, it's been stated that the Quinn are just like dirt. Like, they're only allowed into the city when they can work. Once they stop being able to work, they're thrown back out into the blight. They don't really have any rights inside the city. They can be murdered, and it's just kind of like, who really cares? Again, Irish and dogs need not apply kind of style. But the problem is that at this point, the genericized lower class that they are needs to stop being generic. Like, in the way that there is a proto-feminist movement here, there should be a Quinn's working union movement here. Yep. There's also the fact that this has been around for a really long time. Why is there not a class of Quinn half people? Like, you know how, like, in South Africa, there's, you know, white,
and especially because we do
brown,
learn,
and black.
We do learn that some Quinn girls, you know, are, and it's been 300 years. 300 years of these people living under, like, together under the society. Where are the halvesies?
Yeah, that would be an entire social class. It's also not explained, like, do the poor, well, at one point were the poor Tyrans and the Quinn allied, and then everyone was like, oh no, like, same thing that happened with constructing blackness, and how Irish people went from being cool with black people to being cops. And, like, that kind of, all of those social issues really should be taken more into account. The Quinn, again, should be going, like, as realistic as it is for Siona to be racist against the Quinn, Tommel should be racist against other tribes. He should just be like, fuck that tribe, we don't like them. I remember a thing that, like, the Cherokee as a term is not the name they call themselves. It's the name that a tribe next door had for our hated enemy that we don't like very much. And that's the one people learned. And, like, that's kind of the thing a lot of times, is that these groups don't like each other ancestrally. Yep. And so you could get to now that they're in the same city, there's some kind of an overall racial bias, but
that could be complicated by the fact that new ones are coming in from the outside. So you have Quinn that have been here for generations, living here, that may have lost their ancestral ties and have become more a generalized Quinn, that have, you know, kind of evolved together, merging of different.
They wear suits and they're kind of annoyed at the new people coming in wearing furs.
Yep. And then you have, when the new people come in, they're still bringing in their tribal biases and prejudices that are butting heads again, like you like that kind of stuff. And it's not to say that like all the different tribes need to be dick to each other, but one of the other things that happen when you impress like whole different groups of different tribes is those lines through this terrible thing can blur, but also get stronger.
Well, and the thing is that this is a fundamental part of how empire works, is that you divide lower classes. So it's kind of the way that the British love to import Indians to other places because they were great middle managers for being dicks to other people. Like you say, hey, I'm going to give you $2 and you can now oppress the people I'm giving $1. Isn't it awesome how we're now part of one club and they're part of a different club? Obviously, you can't be as high as us, but you're above them. Again, that's the creation of whiteness America. That's colonial empires everywhere do that. You need, when you have a lower class like that, you need to keep them split somehow. Even hilariously nowadays, supposedly a lot of illegal immigrants in America wanted Trump to win because they didn't want new illegal immigrants coming and going after their jobs. Like, that is a very real, ugly human thing. And that's kind of the thing with the Queen, is it feels almost like she's not really willing to look and criticize the Queen. Like, it's kind of the way that the Queen are like, women mages are awesome. And it's like, really? Like, I don't think every oppressed group has to be perfect in every way. You know what I mean? Like, maybe Tomo could have been a little bit, not that necessarily he has to be, but he could have been a little bit racist. And so this is a part where it's like, this should be coming more to the forefront in terms of how are the Queen going to react to this kind of thing? How is Tomo going to react to this thing? Why do they go to the Queen Union to talk about this or stuff like that? It creates a sense of the Queen as kind of a passive force within the world of the book. And the other problem that we're going to run into is that the book doesn't really understand the metaphor that it's going for with the Blight. So the Deadly Education books had a very similar kind of premise, which is that like the magic that's going on is causing really bad things. But like we're entrenched in this system.
People.
Yeah. And even one of the characters says at one point, one of the evil characters is like, yeah, the problem is people are not going to limit their power because the downstream bad effects are too abstracted from where they are now. So we just can't get people to stop using, I forget whatever thing they were using there. But it's kind of a similar system. But Novik has a much better understanding of how systems make us all complicit. Whereas this book treats the Blight like there's an agrarian society, there's a feudal society, and the lords get to have a bunch of cool toys because they use magic, right? And if we just get rid of them using their cool toys with magic, a lot of people can live. But that's not actually the case. This is much closer to a capitalism, no ethical consumption under capitalism situation where like, okay, let's say they stop using this magic. Everybody in the city is going to freeze and die. This is not, what, are they going to all go back to being a rural agrarian hunter, farmer, subsistence farmers in a generation? No, it's not just about like turning off the power switch. People are not going to give up heating, and they probably could not even survive in this city. I'll talk about that at the end, but like that's really the metaphor she should be going for, but the book never actually acknowledges that like, no, you actually can't stop this system now without killing a lot of people.
Yeah.
And really what they just need to do is they need to start a farming program and just harvest beef for electricity. Like that really is the simplest way to handle this.
Yep. 100%. Just a lot of bunnies, anything that'll reproduce quickly.
That's a good point. Actually, what's funny is in a lot of ways, the Blight is significantly more green friendly than like our modern meat industry, where like you harvest a cow's rib and then the rest of the biomatter is wasted. Blight doesn't actually waste any biomatter except for bones. So,
I think you're completely correct, because there's even a point where Sayona is like, oh, well, we can do it differently, but like it's never. That was one thing that I wished. I was like, but how? Like, how are we going to solve this thing outside of, everybody has to go into the wilderness and survive, which isn't, a realistic.
No, they're
option.
all going to freeze and starve in half a second. But I mean, this also comes down to the fact that like it's never explained where the city gets its food. Even like one assumes they have some kind of industrialized farming, but
Will and I had this conversation over text where I was like, "Where are the farms? Like, this is such a small like footprint for a city
Yeah.
that has been alive for 300 years and developing and functioning and growing, and the population is growing. They can't possibly have." And at one point, they talk about siphoning salt from the oceans. So they're able to get physical salt by taking it from the ocean. And I'm like, are they just, is that how they're getting their food? They're just siphoning the, like, you can siphon energy and you can siphon materials. Like, is that how that's being worked? Like, it's just, it's very, this is
It's
where
one of
the
the
world
places.
building gets a little shaky.
Yeah, in the ways that the hard magic system helps, the vague city building elements don't help. And it kind of makes, and again, the thing is, the book is depending at this point a lot on these as the stakes and the emotional choices that they're making, and you're just kind of like, that doesn't super make sense.
It doth not.
It also kind
Uh,
of feels like it went from like one thief to an industrial revolution, no sense of where they came from or where they were before, like what drove them to needing electricity. So the assumption is that it was just real cold. Like it's mentioned at one point, the sun isn't going to rise for 2 months. So this is like a hellscape like Sweden, where it's really cold all the time and there's not a lot of agricultural bounty. But like I kind of think it would have been more interesting if like his disciples had been kicked out of greener lands to the south, and now they eat the green lands to the south. Because the thing about it is, like, in killing all of the I was about to say the Dawe. What are
the Quen.
the Quen? Like they're gonna run out of they're gonna run out of biomass really quickly. Like it's really weird that they don't get their food from somewhere else
Yep.
where like there's more biomass. So I don't know. Again, these things are a little weak, and
Yeah.
they weaken the story.
And Chris M makes the point. I honestly didn't understand why they founded their city at the North Pole. I don't like, and then Chris M also says there is habitable land to the south of this area. So for why, my dudes? Like exactly for
Again,
why? Like why did you pick a place where there's only like if you had the magic to do this, could you not have used it for transportation purposes and carried you and your people to an area that had like much more richer farmland? And like that one of your shames is that you are not actually the people of this land. You came in from a different place and took over and subjugated the like
more actual colonialism. I mean, it could also, again, I think there's something interesting to the idea of these being people that were pushed out of green farmlands up north, and now they're like, well, you wouldn't let us have the agricultural bounty, so we're reclaiming it, and that's like
yeah.
a little bit more complicated, even if
And interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's really in this half of the book because the problem is from a scope standpoint, the first half of the book is like, ooh, these two people need to learn, come together to prepare for this big presentation, and ooh, they're uncovering secrets. And then once the secrets are uncovered, the scope of this book busts wide open, where we're now dealing with these much larger societal and like conceptual questions, and the world building just doesn't fully hold up in this second half for some of this stuff. Now, the characters are still charactering, and I'm still invested in like how they're going to handle this and what that stuff is. But it kind of it was right after they discovered the mirrors and stuff started coming. Like I think it was maybe right after I read the alchemist conversation with the like sit there and let me talk through my thoughts thing, that I texted Will and I was like, okay, the first half was definitely better. I'm still having a decent time, but this second half is definitely weaker, and it's because of all of these
and it's also
things.
and again, this is the part where the characters start navel gazing and thinking about themes and character a lot to themselves, and the themes also just become very blunt instruments to tell you that colonialism and white people are bad. And it's like, okay, you've bought yourself a lot of goodwill, and this is still an emotionally affecting tale, but it's not as good as before.
Also, and this is the fundamental crime, this book is at the best when you have Siona and Tommel together, and they're dynamic. And this second half of the book has very few scenes with those motherfuckers together. Like, they are separated for a huge chunk of this, and it works in the very last scenes because of how they're going to play out. But for a chunk of, like, that's why I was here. The fan fiction style focus on these two peoples. And so the fact that the second half, again, and part of it is, it almost, so like, on one hand, I love that this is a standalone. The book tells the story, it wraps it up in one book. But this almost felt like and I don't even want to say this because I don't think I would have enjoyed the second book, but like, if book one had just been focusing on them getting up to the discovery, then book two is the fallout of the discovery, and but I still don't think I would have had a second as good of a time in the second book, because we still would have had to deal with a lot of this stuff, maybe just had more scenes of them together, because we could have added some other stuff in for them to do. So I don't know, given that this was the direction the book was going in, and it's one of those where you start the book and you think it's going to go here, like, as far as like a tale. And then it's just like, just kidding, and we're going in this other direction.
Like, you came here for slice of life, dark academia with mild romantic undertones. Never mind. Yeah. It kind of, it does
Viva
that.
la revolution.
Yeah, pretty much. So at this point, she's like, okay, I got to show everyone that I can't just show the high mages. They all know. Everyone has to know that, when they buy cell phones, it kills children in Africa. And Tommel is like, nobody's going to care, man. And she's like, I have to try. I have hope.
And he's like, this is a bad idea. Do not do this. I do not think because it's funny, because both him and Kara are like, this is a dumb as fuck idea. Why would you think this is a good idea? And she's like, we have to do something. What else can we do? And her plan is to go into during her presentation, show all because none of the mages have looked into the other realm and seen the carnage. None of them have seen what Blight looks like. Oh god, I just realized I have to talk about the other scene. I have to talk about a scene I did not like, or I did not like how it played out. There's this point where Siona, after her all fall down, goes back to work, and she's like in the library doing stuff, and Renthorn's like, so you discovered the truth about the other realm, didn't you? And she was like, yeah. And he's like, I always thought it was ridiculous that they won't let us talk about it. Why can't we be talking about one of the fundamental truths of our legacy? And she was like, yeah, it is really weird. And like, at first she thinks that Renthorn has also had like the traumatic reaction to it, but and he's like, my father forbade me. And she's like, oh, he is being stifled by his legacy, blah, blah, blah. And then you discover, no, Renthorn is actually a sicko, and he wants to see the people die. And she's like, oh, you're gross. And he's like, come, Siona, work with me. Come to my lab and see what's on the slab. Sorry, that was a Rocky Horror Picture Show reference. But anyway.
He's like, oh, aren't we both in Devore? Why don't we do it while we're watching someone get disassembled? And she's like, dude.
And he starts like, so on one hand, he's like, give me your research. Let's be research. And then on the other hand, he's like, let me force myself upon you. And you're like, oh, okay. And I didn't need this scene. It doesn't affect the plot.
First of all, it weakens it, because it should be that one of the reasons he's kind of unstable is he is having to live with this knowledge of this horrible thing that is a lie to the society he is a part of. That would then further the theme of like the ways that being at the top of an unjust system damages you as a person. But instead, they decide to go with, oh no, he likes it. Some people in the system like knowing that they're predatory. And that just is not real in that way. Like, there's a longer conversation there, but it just feels very bookish and mustache twirling. And then on top of that, to be like, oh, he gets really horny thinking about how awful and predatory the system is, especially, just feels like it is lacking all of the nuance that almost every other mage character has.
Yep.
And it's awful, and it's not needed for the book.
Yeah, and and you could have gotten, because the outcome of this that is supposed to matter is that Tommel gets fired as her assistant. And there are so many other ways we could have gotten to that without this playing out the way it did. Like, I don't mind Renthorn being an absolute dick. I do think using his like him coming to terms with how their society works and it pushing him into, you know, a darker place, and like that, I think that what Will was saying is way more fascinating as a concept, and how, but just being like, oh, let me see the blood, like it's just such a weird choice. And also like that, and like give me your research and I'm going to be really salty. It's just such a weird combination. And again, you could remove this scene from the book, and outside of finding a different way for Tommel to get fired, it doesn't matter. Listen, and she does have like, she's going to forever have like weird reactions to Renthorn and stuff like that, and it does affect her, but like that, her being affected by that does not impact the rest of what's going to happen in this book. And
yeah,
basically,
it's not really a discussion in the book. It feels a little bit like the author's trying to do the like, now we see the vines inherent in the system kind of a thing, and it almost works, but it doesn't. I would have actually liked if he hadn't assaulted her, but we kept the information that Thomas talks about later where he did assault other maids. Like, just because he has this damage from this thing doesn't mean we have to cut out him using his power over others. Like, it's just this one scene is not going to really affect her that much.
And it doesn't work. It's such a weird scene. But after this, she goes back home and she's trying to like work on her thing. Alba helps her get her stenograph back up and running. She starts working on the spell that she's going to do. She meets with like Tommel and Kara, who are kind of helping her. And basically the plan is thus. Oh, also she talks to the baker's, the remaining baker's son about his older brother, and learns that like at the barrier, they would have to throw people back into the blight. And so they knew that the blight was heaviest around the barrier. And so when they threw people back, they would die. And it's just this like, just shitty,
it's PTSD Nom style. Yeah.
And it helps reinforce her that there are people that will face the horrors and be emotionally affected and think that it's wrong. She also learns that Brigham is his
he's great. He's a great employer of women, we've been told throughout this thing. He makes a lot of textiles.
Yeah.
But he seems to only employ Quinn women.
Yes.
What's up with that?
What's up with that? Yeah, what's up with it is the dyes they use in the factory make them infertile. So these women can't actually have, and he's like, it was good birth control since they couldn't control themselves. And you're like, oh no. And there's a point, or let me tell you, the subtle racism from Siona. There's this point earlier where she's going to talk about how, like, she's about to say something about the Quen multiplying like bunnies, and then she realizes, oh, that might be a shitty thing to say to Tommel. And like, there's a bunch of small moments like that. And so we've seen, and what I like about this is we've seen Siona believe this shit about the Quen. And then to have the scene where Brigham is using it as justification of the, it did keep the, and she's horrified. We saw her have similar beliefs about them, overpopulating earlier. And it just works to show that these are ingrained beliefs that allow a lot of this stuff to happen and allow for you not to realize the humanity. And it works well because it's not like, oh, he's the only one who believed this. We saw our protagonist buy into this as well. We did talk about the scene where she confronted Brigham and he was like, oh, yes, you shouldn't have known.
Fine.
Yeah, it's all okay.
Yeah. Basically at this point, she writes up, her plan is basically she's going to go to the batteries that run the city, and they have to change every 12 hours the spells. So her and Kara sneak in because nobody notices Quinn. She never realized that. They swap out what spell is going to change, but they don't tell you what it is because it's one of those reveals where the characters know the plan, but the audience doesn't. And then she has to go reveal her plan in front of the great high mages or whatever. Yeah. And she's like, here's the problem with society. And she shows them all these people being destroyed by the blight in a super clear mirror. And the archmages are all like, yeah, we know, it's awful. That sucks.
But they're also like, we don't talk about this. How dare you oh, like, and then Renthon is like, yeah, baby, like, just fucking.
And his dad is
Someone,
like, stop being horny or I'm going to disown
yes,
you.
there's literally this. One of the in our comments, someone somewhere was like, every time Renthorn showed up, I was like, why are you here, bro? And like,
You just like that.
yeah, because he's so peripheral. Like, it's again, he's not even like the main bad guy. He's just this dude that keeps showing up. I don't understand. But anyway, she unveils it before everyone because at first she baits them where she's like, "Look at my cool thing where you have it's really clear image of the oh ho ho," and they're like, "This is so useful. We'll be able to use it for the mapping spells. Great work, Siona." And then she's like, "Ta ha ha! Look upon the mirror of what you do every day." And they're like, "Oh no, some people are throwing up. It's not a great time." And they're like, "How dare you?" And she's like, "I think we should let society as a whole decide if they're okay with this and this shitty system." And they're like, "Oh no." Siona, don't do it. What did you do? And she's like, it's already happening. And then at the strike of 12, the things flip over and
Batteries
her
flip
spell
over.
comes. And what she does is she opens little windows wherever the reserve is siphoning from to power the guns, the cars, turning the tap on any little thing that is being used off of the reserve. Around where it's being used, it opens a little window where you can see exactly where that energy is coming from across the town. Like the entire city. The Quen can see what's happening. The people of Tehran can see what's happening. And people are going apeshit. She gets arrested. She goes to jail. She hears screaming. She thinks, there'll probably be some screaming for a while, but then everybody will, quiet down and go into contemplation to think about the realities of their situation to work on some change. But no, screaming, she hears gunfire. Like, it's just shit show and a half, babes. And people
then,
are
and then at the jail entrance, her cousin shows up, Alba, and she's like, Alba, it's so great to see you. And Alba's like, did you do this? And she's like, what? Why are you upset? I'm great. And she's like, no, the Quen are rioting. They destroyed my shop.
The city's on fire.
But like actual fire, not like Black Lives Matter fire. And so it's like one of these, like, there's a race riot, and she's like, you did this horrible thing. You made me see that. And she's like, I didn't think this would happen. And here's my problem with this. I believe that Siona would not expect the Quen to riot and cause mass destruction, right? But she passed this plan by Tommel. He would know. It is insane that he didn't think that this would happen. Like, that's the part of this that I find kind of ridiculous.
And it's crazy because he's like, he did tell me not to do it. I told him, and he was like, not a good idea. And I'm like, did you not explicitly tell her that the Quen would riot, my guy? Or did you tell her and she wasn't? Because that's what I couldn't figure out, because there was a line where she was like, he told me this would happen, and I didn't even, and I'm like, what? Like, this is one of those times where a scene becomes muddy, where what happened and didn't happen. So St. John said Tommel did warn her. She didn't listen. And it's in the moment.
I don't think he specifically mentions that the Quen will riot. I think that's the part, especially, that's like, I get how she wouldn't think necessarily that is the case, but he would definitely. He's Quen. Yeah. He should know this. And this is where the lack of specificity to the Quen kind of becomes a problem.
Yeah, and it's just it confused me as well, because I was like, this, when he and Kara, because she also told Kara the situation, and they were like, this is a shitty idea, do not do this, your people will not agree. And see, so St. John said, I thought he said there would be unrest and people wouldn't respond well. And I took it, and I think Siona also took it as the Tyranish would have unrest and wouldn't respond well. And so St. John is saying, maybe not right, but the subtext was there. And if it was something that Siona and I both missed.
Well, and Tommel should just have actually been like, no, this is not going to end well. They're all going to get into a fight. And then also bear in mind, Kara then goes on a dangerous mission to make sure that this happens. Like, she puts the spell in place after this. This is clearly something that, like, they were okay with in a way that, again, it just doesn't make a ton of sense. And so that was a part of the book where I was like, okay, maybe you are the dumbest. Well, no, because again, I believe that Siona should, with her bad people skills and her lack of really understanding of social movements, because, like, they don't have, like, a history of social movements. But the thing is, they should. Again, there should be like a Quinn Liberation League or something. Like it's very weird that the Quinn are treated like they only started trickling in the last 10 years.
I think what would have worked if there had been one, but she didn't know about it. Like she was so separate. Like it was something that the Quinn were doing, and she, was completely unaware of it. Because I do buy that she would look at this completely from I need to let my people know what's going on, and not realize what will happen when the Quen see this irrefutable proof that all of the sadness of their society, the trauma they have faced as these disparate groups coming together here. St. John makes the point, I feel like more Tamil POV chapters could have fleshed out that side well, because I do think he would have known they will riot, and that maybe he, in his head, he was like, they will riot and the Tyrannish will get what they, fire and brimstone, baby. Because I do believe that
he would tell her. Like, that's the thing, is it's weird it's not more in the book.
Yeah.
And so that kind of happens, and like
it's rough. The rioting is rough. The mage's responses. So she gets taken out of prison by Brigham. Also, Alba, because I thought Alba would come in and be like, oh no, when people are faced with the fact that their family member has done something terrible and they start making excuses for them, I was expecting Alba to be like, tell me why this is, like a little bit of that, and then kind of crumbling, knowing that not only
you're not in your right mind, you almost tried to kill yourself 3 days ago.
Yeah, exactly. Like it being like, oh my God, I should never let you leave the house. I shouldn't have, and take some of it on her, and then for Siona to be like, this has nothing to do with you. And have that kind of work into it. But and it's also just a rough scene, because Winnie's like, she's like, Aunt Winnie never wants to see you again. We hate you. You're disowned. Goodbye. And you're like, well, that fucking sucks. Because then you get a scene about when she first was. There's a point where she's writing a letter later, and it talks about how when Aunt Winnie comes to get her, she's like, "You're my girl. Yeah, you're mine now. You're my girl." And it's just like such a. Like, I felt the way
moment.
And the way this was handled, I think there was a way to get more impact out of it by making Alba less like upset and angry, but also sad about it.
It feels like the author wanted to make a point that was a little bit stronger than the character could shoulder realistically. Because again, it really does feel like she would kind of be making more excuses for her cousin in her head. She wouldn't immediately go to the confrontation that the author wanted the character to have, of like, oh, this is the price of what you've done, and the ways that it's unexpected.
Yep.
So basically, Brigham comes to get her out of jail. He goes around, he's killing a bunch of people, basically
shattering kids' hands.
One of the council members has a race car or a sports car. I think he's
that's like armored.
Yeah, and there's like it's a Batmobile. He has a Batmobile is what it is.
Yes, that's exactly what he has, and he loves it. He's out there playing, if you hit 2, you get 10, you get double points on the road with the rioting Quen, and you're like,
that's crazy. And they go to Brigham's house, and there's all this discussion. There's a little bit of discussion of like, who Quinn's servants, like, are they around or not? Are they helping or not? And again, it's one of the ways the Quinn feel a little But anyway, and there's a last conversation between her and him, and this is where she kind of zeroes in on he pushed her forward to make up for his own sins, and that he is kind of a hollow man. He has had to hollow himself not to deal with this the knowledge of what he's done, and in his factories as well. Like, he makes a bunch of women infertile all the time without telling them. And like, I think it was pushed a little too hard, but it is just a very nice scene, because there is a real sense. Even she says even a couple times, like, she still wanted to make him proud. She didn't know why, but it was still there in her.
And the disappointment in his voice still affected her.
And he really wants her to repent and come to his side, and she just won't. And there's a part where very clearly he's trying to get her to write a confession as a letter to her aunt that doesn't work.
And he
Yeah,
doesn't want her to die. Like,
yeah, that's the
he
other thing.
very much does not want her. And he's like, if you repent, maybe like you're never going to be a mage again, but maybe you don't have to die. And she's like, I stand by what I did. I am
Hmm.
not, I repent for nothing. And she writes a letter. He has her write a letter to Aunt Winnie that he pens for her. And even in the letter, she's like, I'm not sorry for what I did, but I'm sorry, for not appreciating you. And he's like, you're not even to your aunt for her benefit are you
Hmm.
going to say you were sorry? And she's like, nah, man, truth for life. However little.
that is the vibe, yes. But and so again, it's one of these moments that like it's a very nice scene, but I felt like it pushed a little far. Anyway, next a riot breaks in and he kills a ton of people. There's a kind of nice metaphor. Oh no, okay, this is the part that really annoyed me, and where the author's pushing too hard. She makes this point that the riot breaks in and he's like, "I'll go, I'll save you. Don't worry, I'll protect you
I'll
from them."
protect you. You'll
And
be
she goes,
safe.
oh, "It's crazy that in society they dehumanize both women and Quinn by pitting us against each other. They make them the monsters and us the maidens, and then they say you can't do things because we have to protect you, and then you, Quinn, we have to protect our like." There's that whole
Yeah.
dynamic, and it's like, yes, that is a real dynamic, but also like it is weird for you to be having this epiphany right now
Right
because this is
now.
not even the most clear time it could have happened, and like it's too much. Like it's just I know you read a book about this author, but like it's too much in this moment. And that's what I kind of mean by the book being a little too avaricious at this point with all of its themes and stuff.
Yes. Um,
There is a nice moment though when they go out after he had murdered everyone, where like the servants had put sheets over the bodies, and she thinks about how it's kind of ironic that he has to be protected from seeing
protected
how
from his
ugly the thing he
actions.
did is. That's like again, that's the thing about the book. The book can be subtle, or not subtle, but like can be nuanced at times, and it just isn't at others. So they go to the courthouse, and all the archmages are like, "Okay, we
Repent.
decided repent," and she's like, "No,"
No.
and she's also like, well, there's a whole side plot with her dad that we don't need to get into. And she's
She also
like,
is like, maybe Tommel will do my last will, but probably not. Oh well. And then they're like, okay, we decided after half an hour, you're gonna unanimous, you're gonna die. We're
"Gotta take
killing
the
you.
poison."
And she has to drink this poison, and she's like, they can't even like even their way of execution is so banal that and
Mm-hmm.
so like toothless because they can't face their own
They're gonna make you
savagery.
do it yourself and then
Yes.
repent from the Bible while you do it,
Yeah.
essentially.
And she downs the poison. She's like, we out. And at this point, unfortunately, Will had told me something, so I was like,
I
oh.
I thought I was being subtle about
No,
it.
you weren't, because the problem was the minute the book started heading towards the direction of, oh, she's probably gonna have to die. I was like, and then you said that, like, because you said your thing, because
Okay,
basically,
all
Will,
right. So here's what happens.
yeah,
Basically, the Tommel, she had set up a spell that Tommel didn't want to use, but then he did, that creates the blight eats everybody, all the archmages in the chamber, including her, and she dies. And
yeah,
like,
and she was gonna die because of the poison, but she was like, fuck, if I'm dying, let's take out all the bitches.
right. And so she dies here. And the
Yeah,
problem is when I read it, I was like, oh, okay, so there's more left to the book. So we'll see how she gets out of this scrape. I'm not emotionally affected because I know she's not actually dead. We haven't seen the body yet, kind of a thing. And then at the end of the book, all of the chapters start with a little epistolary from the in-world, like a quote or a title or something like that. So at the end of after the next part that we're going to talk about, the last actual chapter of the book, it starts talking about a primer. And so I listened for 3 minutes to a thing that I kept thinking was the epistolary of the epilogue,
next
but
chapter.
isn't. It's just at the end of the book, so that's where the audiobook reads it. And
Yeah.
so I was so frustrated because she doesn't come back, but like I also didn't have the impact of her dying because I just didn't think it was
Yeah.
it really had happened. So
Now-
I told Maria, you don't need to listen to the end part. You're gonna get annoyed by it. I didn't think that was gonna spoil you for it.
Well, what it was he said, and it's really annoying given what happens right beforehand. So I knew there was something where you expected there to be more, and then
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't. And so then once the book starts going towards them talking about like, oh, she's gonna get the death penalty and she's gonna, I was like, oh, this bitch dies, and then the book ended, and then it started talking about words and magical definitions, and Will was like, eh? Like that one like
It was so annoying.
so luckily I went into it knowing that something was going to happen that you were expecting there to be a follow-up for that wouldn't be. And so the minute it started pointing me at
Yeah, no,
death, I was like, and now granted, I'm happy for that because I was able to have the emotional impact of reading her death and knowing it was going to be, it actually worked. I think my reading experience was better because of it. So thank you. I was able to appreciate what was happening in the moment for what it was.
I literally was kind of like half not paying attention at that point, and I was like, okay, she's coming back. I don't need to process this emotionally. Like, whatever.
And that's the nice thing is I got to process it emotionally. So thank you. I wasn't saying that to be like, it actually helped with my enjoyment of the ending and understanding it. Cause she takes the vial and then she hears the spell kick in and everybody's like, what was that? Cause they say, do you have any last words? And cause she takes it and it's going to take a few minutes for the numbing to kind of set in and for her to go to sleep. And she was like, those are my last words. And she's like, Tommel did it. And then it cuts to a scene where she's asking Tommel to do this thing. And it is basically to siphon at the magistrate and siphon all of the mages. And so basically destroy the institution in one blow. And he's like, no, I'm not doing that. That's mass murder. I'm not going to like, and there's this one point where it's almost like he's going to say, I'm not going to be a mass murderer like you. And she's like, let's be real. You would have to kill a lot more people to get on my level. And then,
like, I will not use the weapons of the oppressors against them.
Yes. And she basically says, okay, you decide what you want to do. And whatever you need to do to live with yourself is the correct answer. I have to go do my shit. And
I'm giving agency to the Queen in this moment because I am not a white savior.
Yes.
Is kind of the book.
And it's also this moment where she's like, okay. And she asks, like, can I stay here with you? Like, if I have potentially one night, can I just stay? And he takes it not the way she intends initially. And so she's like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to go home. And she goes, actually, it's better this way. It's more hopeful. I'll see you later kind of vibe, because they'd been talking as if she was like, not explicitly, but they were talking around the fact that she was probably going to die. And so she ends it, and she's like, okay, I'll go home. I'll see you later. This is how, because she kind of was like, if I have one night left on Earth, I'd like to spend it with someone whom I respect and care about, who, also currently respects and cares about me. And then when she's like, never mind, I'll just go home. Hopeful, see you next time. And then he kisses her. And it's this nice moment because like the book has not, and it cannot, by this stage of the book, there is no room for them to be romantically into each other. The book has no room to make space for that. So you get some kisses. You get this, they kiss like he kisses her, she kisses him. And they almost go in for like a third one, but they can't. And like and in his mind, he's like, I want to remember her this way, like on her toes, her eyes kind of sparkling, and she has hope. Like there's something about this. And that's as much as this book in the second half can even give to the two of them being into each other, because there's too much shit going on. She fucks off. Kara comes in and is like, he's like, I don't know what I should do with this spell. And you aren't fully sure what it is. You've got an idea. Mm-hmm. And Kara's like, nah. And he's like, it's not my future. It's not Siona's future. We're older. You're 15. What would you do for your future? And she was like, absolutely, I'm fucking killing all the mages. Like,
okay. This is another problem with the Quinn, which is that she is second generation. She is not, I mean, technically she is, but essentially she has, even as much as he has tried to make her not part of the Tyrian society and kept some of his original tribe in her, like, this is the part where it feels again like the author doesn't quite understand the immigrant experience. Like, she would not necessarily want to burn to the ground this city that is her home. And so like this is one of the moments where it's not that the author handles the immigration stuff between him and her incorrectly. It's just there really should be more Quinn characters with a variety of feelings about this. And like and so that I felt was like kind of lacking in this moment.
Yeah. And I think you're right, adding more characters, because I don't mind having Kara be like, because there is this thing that we're first generation and sometimes and second generation immigrants. They tie themselves to their old traditions in their homeland so much that they end up more conservative than the countries that they came from. Like the countries they
Their
come from
culture almost enters stasis when they get here.
Exactly. Which is why I was okay with Kara having a little bit of stasis, because she is that like kind of first generations, or I guess you would say zero generation Tyran or Quen living in Tehran person. But I think you're completely correct. Having other Quen who had been here for 200 years, their family that are established, I would even like to have seen different social or economic stratas amongst the Quen, and then being like, this is our home.
Yeah.
We have been here longer than our memories can count. Like, this is as much ours. And but then having Kara be like, no. And someone did say, or St. John says, Kara was a little too trigger happy all the time. And then Pink Synthetic makes the point, more Quen, more women, both would have definitely helped. But seeing other perspectives in this moment, and then them making a selfish decision as first / kind of zero generation, and choosing to blow up this home of many, and kind of like being honest about what that meant.
Yeah, and the thing is, that's part of the problem, is that because they are the only two Quen characters, really, they symbolize all Quen, and like that just isn't what everybody in the city would think. And so it's kind of limiting. I feel, again, there's almost a certain sense that the author is not really treating the Quen as like people. She's really treating them more as like magical minority, or like the author feels like she can't criticize them too much. She kind of has to, like, she doesn't have a right to talk about them. It's kind of like the way that like people write about like Native Americans sometimes, where they're mostly like just hands off because they don't want to get into trouble, but they're trying to write something good about them. That's how it kind of feels like she writes the Quen sometimes.
Yeah.
And especially in the ending, which basically what happens is that we then after they get all the mages get blighted, we cut to Tommel on the roof being a sniper, being like, oh, I did do it, I did kill them all. And then we get the reveal that Renthorn and Moira were not in Mordra, and so they were not in there. So the only two mages left, and Renthorn's like, haha, now we can have ultimate power.
I am Archmage Supreme.
We are the only ones left in the city. And he sees Tommel and he's like, give me that magical typewriter and your dog. He doesn't say that part. But and Tommel's like, you know what? It's okay. Kara ran away with it. I'm just gonna hold that as long as I can. And then Kara breaks Renthorn's face open with the magical typewriter, which was pretty badass. Yeah. And then the loser cuck guy, he has him in lock, and then he's like, no, we only kill for food. We don't kill
or survival.
Remember this moment and make changes in your society. And the guy's like, I peed my pants. I don't think that actually happens, but that's the gist of it. And the vibe. And then this is part of the reason I didn't actually think she was dead, is that this is too much. This is not falling action. This is building to another climax. So I was like, oh, the book's not done. Something else is going to happen. And then they try to get out of the city, and there's this stuff where they run into other immigrants who are trying to get out of the city. And I was like, why are other people trying to get out of the city? And you realize that there's a mass exodus of Quen leaving the city, going out, and there's a whole point made that they don't really have enough clothes, so they're having to bring all the clothes with them. And a few of them have been out in the cold, and they're like, we got to get to the caves. And he's like, there's probably not a lot of people who even know where the caves are anymore. And that's how the book ends. They're out of the sphere, and they're in the cold again, and the Quen, he remembers Siona and hope for the future. And I'm like, so you're all going to starve to death tomorrow? What is this ending? Like, that makes no sense. Again, the author doesn't seem to realize that her magic system is not like we kill people to get like cool little Twinkie bulbs. Like, you're maintaining the infrastructure of a city. What are these people going to eat?
And unfortunately, it doesn't solve the fact that Blight still, so like we have this one mage now, right? But there's all the spells that have already been produced, and there's also all the other mages that weren't high mages or archmages.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still plenty of people that can make the city function. Like all the other industrial scale mappers, like what Siona was before she became a high mage, like the magic system is still going to exist and thrive. Because what I thought originally she was going to do was blow up the magic system itself, like get the things to destroy
Mm-hmm.
themselves, like use the energy of killing all the high mages and the archmages to destroy the actual like framework. Because then it's going to be cold, but now there's no more blight. So you can go back to, because like there's this point where they talk about the Kaldnai tribe used to be 10,000 strong. But because of the blight, lack of resources, competition with other tribes caused by the lack of resources and the blight, they've kind of come down. So I thought she was like, fuck it. Everyone's going back into the wilderness and gonna have to figure this out for themselves. Like I thought that was gonna be, but the problem is this current ending is like there's still more than enough mages and systems in place that these people are running out into the world,
Mm-hmm.
into the snow, and the blight's still going to be a problem. The reserve is still going to exist, and it's not just outside the reserve that kind of just is always on pulling magic from anyone who kind of walks into its space, is not just around the city. It is also, they've targeted like rivers where animals come to get the salmon during salmon season,
Yeah.
or passes where animals have to migrate through. So there's still going to be a ton of places, and also just random magicians and mages who will pull. You are working off the assumption that everyone who remains is going to be like, maybe we shouldn't be using magic, because then the Quen's survival outside, if they can survive this winter, then they can kind of start rebuilding their like how they
Society.
used to live in
Yeah.
society. But as is, it's just kind of,
You just
wow.
left this city after having thrown a riot and also done a lot of terrorism where you killed all of their religious and political and engineering figures. They're not going to be happy about this. They're not going
Yeah.
to be like, well, maybe we should. So again, this is the part where the book. This is the culmination of the problem the second half of the book has, where it's not really understanding some of the systems it's put into place, and the world building is a little too funny or fuzzy. Um, a couple comments. St. Jen said, I like how the ending was a reflection of the beginning. Sienna standing before the archmages, but more confident. Tommel running out of the city instead of into it. Yeah, that is a nice.
I mean, I do like
version.
the symmetry of it on a narrative perspective, but I don't understand why the other Quen. I understand why Tommel and Kara were running out, because they are now like, most
There's
wanted
fugitives.
criminals.
Yeah.
And but like everyone else, and the justification is that they're all going to be targeted because of the riot, and so like they're going to get fucked either way. They might as well take their chance out there. But again, and then Saint John
I don't
makes
think they even say that.
no, they do. They said, we know what will happen to us here now that this has all happened. So they do say that.
Yeah.
And St. John makes the comment, I think the main towers were overpowered and destroyed, right? I don't remember that. I all she did was expand she basically did the thing. She made the city bigger and used the mages to power that spell.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if any actual functional systems were destroyed.
Chris M says, I felt like the book was really about them as much, I think she's talking about the Quinn, as it was about how people fall into the trap of believing what's comfortable and being complicit in racism. I would agree with that. I don't think the book is, but I think the problem with that is that the focus of the book in the second half is more on the Quinn instead of this elite university being racist. And so when you have so much of the plot decisions being held up by what are the Quinn gonna do, like the focus shifts in a way where you then need to switch the focus. And Pink Synthetic said, my biggest issue with the whole thing was the focus, and that doesn't really fix anything with the patriarchy or the magical system, really. I thought they did too, but no, it was just one.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something where it just...
Yes. So Chris M does make that, and this might be why people think it was destroyed. Chris M says they got a bit of a gap before they replaced the spell sheets that ran the towers, but nothing was destroyed. And once the reserve had pulled through, once the high mages were destroyed, it started pulling the magic from the reserve. So it was being used to power, like if guns were going off and stuff, the guns stopped working because the reserve magic was being used for the expansion purposes, and it allowed for them to escape because the blight right outside wasn't being used. It was coming from inside the city. So it is just, and so St. John said, Siona really did fuck up then. And you can't look at it and be like, so Siona was trying to make change, but unfortunately one person, no matter what they do, is just going to fuck up. And I kind of like this because it's a perfect example of how you cannot have a savior. One person cannot completely fix a system on their own. And in this case, Siona doesn't fix it. She kills a fuck ton of mages, but there's still plenty of normal, regular, schmegular mages who weren't high mages that were working industrial fields that can continue the system going. But it doesn't hit home like that. That becomes kind of how I read it, but I don't think that's what the book itself is trying to say.
I think no, I think you're correct. I think the book knows it needs to swerve to not be about a white savior. Thus, how Siona is constantly thinking in the second half about how she's doing this because she's selfish. To the point that I'm like, I think you're overstating the case a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
This case. Like, I think you're trying to swerve away from that trope a little bit too much. What I would have liked to see is something where I was going to say Siona and Tommel have a rupture in how they think about the problem, where he wants a certain amount of gradualism in the fixing of it. You know, like, let's start a civil rights movement. Essentially, we need to slowly change this system because it cannot change all at once. We'll all starve. We'll all lose heat. You know, if we kill all the high mages, all we're going to get is whatever the Terran version of the KKK is, and they're going to go after us. And then you could have had her being more like, no, we need drastic action in this moment. And that would play both into how her character is like that. Like, she thinks big, she thinks a little egotistical, she wants change, and also in the ways that he understands what the Quinn have to lose, whereas to her it's more abstract. And I think that's like, I think that would have been a more interesting split between the two of them in philosophy.
Yep. And I think that would have helped couch the messiness of the ending a bit. So a couple of people are kind of discussing about how, like, Siona really did kind of fuck up in as far as trying to save people or like make the system better. And Miss Allie Snow says, I kind of admire an author who's willing to leave things messy. And I think if it had been presented differently, like with the knowledge that there, you know, what was the other option? Like if he had presented like, let's do it gradually so we don't cause, you know, mass famine, and that the Quen will be the ones that have to eat the fallout of this. Yeah, and it's
the thing is, the book presents it like, oh, okay, the Native Americans are going back to their land and things will be beatific now. And you're like, for all the reasons we said, that doesn't seem like it's quite correct.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because as much as the second half of the book has quite a few problems, I still overall enjoyed it. Like there's a lot, and you're right. The author creates a lot of goodwill in the first half of I just watched a really good video about animatronics and living characters in Disney, and there's this one thing where one of the CEOs said the Disney brand is a bank. You have to deposit into the brand if you're going to take out from them. So any failure is you're taking money out of it, and so when you do good things, it puts it back into the process. And the book kind of did that, where the first half was building up the trust in the story, and while the second half has a lot of these things that make it quite messy, there's enough of that goodwill from the first half that you kind of ride along and like.
And to be fair, the author is still quite talented. Like the dialogue still feels real. We talked about some of the things that do feel quite nuanced in the second half. The plot moves along quickly. I did think Siona and Tommel were sweet. Even her inner thoughts are well done, though there's too much of them. So it's something where the book is messy, but it it does just enough things right to be really enjoyable to read.
Yeah. I will say I didn't cry in the ending. I was affected because I did I knew. Yeah,
Oh,
I
that
did
is a
know.
black mark against this book.
Yeah, I did know that Siona, because of everything we just stated before this, I was like, oh, our girl's gone. This is it. um, and unfortunately, I think because the scope of the second half of the book had to go so broad to deal with the types of to deal with what this story was dealing with, you lose some of the close sentimentality of the first half that grounded these two characters as people you rooted for. Um, Man, it smells like pie. Sorry,
Guys, she's
guys.
having a
It smells like
stroke.
am I having a stroke? Why does it smell like baked goods? I don't know why it smells like baked goods in my house. Anyway,
Okay, we're keeping it together. We're almost there.
we're almost there.
Yeah, I think more or less what you're saying is correct. The author had written a previous book called Sword of Kagan, which I'd seen suggested a couple times, that I would be kind of interested in looking at. More than anything, I'm kind of looking forward to what they do next, because I don't really think authors improve, but maybe the next book will be a topic that they're a little bit more confident in handling. St. Jen had said, did you read this? From what I understand, this was originally supposed to be a novella that was expanded, so I wonder if the messiness came from trying to add to the story.
That would make sense.
I mean, the thing about it is you could see how at the end of the novella, she's like, this is a juicy idea of vampire magic, but it's like that has such wide-ranging stakes. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's not like, this is the blight is slowly causing cancer sometimes to some people. It's like, no, literally, there's no good application for this technology.
There's none. There's no way to be like, because again, Siona's like, and if somebody was like, well, what if we just farmed cattle and then rabbits and we just used their life force, and then you could have like the, what are they called? The PETA.
Yeah. I mean, there is a fundamental problem where, social movements are not glamorous or interesting. And they're just long and system based, and that doesn't make for a great, it's much easier to write a final battle than it is to write, the civil rights
political
protest
fallout.
And slow gradualism and talking about this and that. And so it's inherently, you can't just you can't have a civil rights movement in the back half of a novel in the way that you could have a fight against orcs kind of a thing, or a big moment of blowing up stuff. And also I think you run against, the moment we're living in, not to get Katie about all this, but the moment we're living in is so dark and depressing and unoptimistic. Things are just getting worse. That it is hard to believe in any progress being serious or long lasting. And so the book is kind of up against that, where you're like, yeah, but we know this doesn't work. We know it backslides. And so I think that's something that also the book had a little bit of difficulty with, and I was very aware of while reading it.
Yep, I would agree. But yeah, that's it. That's the book. If you've read this, what did you think? How did you feel about the shift in scope and tone from the first half to the second half? What did you think about the ending? It's so interesting to read a book that, I'm like, yeah, solid B. Like if I had to isolate the second half of the book, I would be like, probably not. But all together, I'm still like, yeah, that's a B. Maybe a B minus, but a B. And for people, we read a lot of not Bs, so I'm actually like, damn, that's pretty good.
I mean, we spent a lot of this complaining or even talking about things that don't work, but I would put this in the crunchy tier maybe. It's just it was enjoyable to read, and that is so rare on this channel of books that are just terrible. So yeah, would you suggest her earlier book, Sword of Kagan? Would you like to join?
Tell us why.
Would you like to join our Patreon at some point? I think I'm going to create just a commercial for our Patreon that's 30 seconds long. I can just slide in somewhere. It'll have cool little clips. But for now, join our Patreon, support independent journalism. And thank you for joining us, our parasocial darlings.
Bye.